Holy shit, that was like perfectly on time, and I just ruined it. Good evening, guys and gals and non-binary pals. Tonight we will be doing another installation, whatever, of that D&D podcast's Improbable interview series. And tonight we are joined by Andrew Gillis. They are right down there.
Hi.
Before we give Andrew time to introduce themselves and their collected works and deeds, I guess let's introduce ourselves so the people listening know who the hell we are. I'm Aaron. I DM some of the games, and I guess I play in one or two of them.
I'll go. Hi, I'm Zach. I also DM some of the games, and I play in basically all of them at this point, which is really cutting into my free time. So,
Hi, I'm Mike. I GM a couple of games and maybe play in one now, which is cool, and ask questions occasionally.
Yeah, so who's GMing this interview?
Oh, we didn't roll for initiative. Shit.
it's actually a three-way co-op for GMing.
Oh, gosh, okay.
You are.
Oh, right on, great. So, you're all in studio. And there's the sound guy, he's really grumpy. His name's Herb.
I attack him.
And he's staring at you through... Okay, whoa, all right. I didn't know it was that kind of party, but all right.
So, yeah, why don't you give us the rundown on you, and then we'll begin to interrogate you mercilessly for several hours until you escape the room.
Oh, it's an escape room interview. Okay, great. Well, y'all better be warned that I beat Mist once when I was a young child of 17. No one has beaten Mist. It's a lie.
Mist makes way more sense than our escape rooms, though. So.
Damn. Okay, so I'm Andrew. I am a professional role player and game designer. Wow. Okay. People pay me money sometimes to be on the internet playing role-playing games.
That's the dream.
I'm on such illustrious channels as Roll20 and Twitch.tv/D&D and a bunch of other places. I'm making a game called Girl by Moonlight. That's about tragic magical girls. It's a Forged in the Dark game. I'm also making some supplemental content as stretch goals for Hack the Planet, which is Fraser Simon's climate fiction Forged in the Dark game.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the short version anyways.
Well, first off, I just want to say thanks a bunch for being willing to come on and talk to us about just kind of anything at all.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for making time out of your day for three random weirdos.
I mean, my show today was canceled, so this is like a thing today. It's super chill.
Nice.
Cool.
Well, I guess let's start off from the top. What made you decide to make a game about magical girls?
Okay, I'm going to have to stop you there. We're going to take a step backwards first. Because first we have to do the rant about what the fuck even is genre.
Okay.
I would appreciate
there's some groundwork that I would like to lay about genre generally, and then about what magical girls stuff means to me and is, and then I can answer your question. So, let's start by talking about genre. Generally, in any kind of genre fiction, the genre has like not exactly a life cycle, but there's like a development of it that needs to happen. So you'll have let's take Westerns as an excellent example. The genesis of Westerns is the theft of samurai movies from Japan to Hollywood. So very notably, this is actually the history of American samurai movie knockoffs. But you'll have your early genre examples a lot of spaghetti westerns fall into this category where they were just how Yojimbo became Fistful of Dollars, for example, or a lot of the John Wayne westerns where they're kind of, some people like to say pure, but I would say naive genre examples. And so you have stuff where there's a hero who is heroic and does good things and beats bad people, and there is no examining of any of the things that happen in the thing. It just carries on and goes about its its story arc in the most typical expected way. And then as the genre matures, you get into the like peak expression of that stuff, and then things start to get weird, and you have late genre stuff that is either revisionist or really like on the outside. So things like the Unforgivens, or the other kind of like darker westerns. And there's kind of more of a sense of play because a framework has been established and everyone knows what it is and what it's going to be about. And so you can actually start to flip things on their head, ask more interesting questions. Like the space is defined and then you're really making the full use of it, to the point where you get something like one of my favorite movies ever, called Tampopo, which is a Japanese noodle western. So there's going to be a media recommendations list from me throughout the course of this interview. This is the first thing on it. It is an absolutely brilliant movie. It is about a woman who inherits her husband's ramen shop, and it's a western, but only in the most like vague kind of formalistic way. It's really actually about like food, and the intersection of like different cultures' food stuff with Japan, because ramen, it's important to remember, is a fusion dish pulling on Taiwanese and Chinese, kind of mainland Chinese cooking traditions, and a mixing of that with a bunch of Japanese traditions. So there's a whole bunch of that kind of stuff going on in the movie. But it's all framed as a western. So there's this like cowboy figure who rolls up. He's a truck driver. He shows up at Tampopo, is the main character, shows up at her restaurant. He has gun with him, who is his friend and like co-pilot.
Okay.
Cowboy has to have a gun.
Yeah.
And so the two of them show up and they like commit to helping her make her restaurant better, because she was never the like ramen chef. It was her husband, and so she doesn't do a great job at it. Anyways, it's a totally brilliant movie, but it's just like this great example of like how fucking out there can you get and still be within a genre? Like how... Hello? Okay.
Yeah, you're still there.
Hello?
My computer just decided to turn everything off for a second.
You ranted so hard, it went away.
But also, like, The Big Lebowski is a noir movie, is another great example of, like, super outside late genre stuff, where it fits all the formula, but, like, it's a weird comedy about some deadbeat dude whose rug gets stolen. Like, like it might seem like it has nothing to do with it on the surface, but the form can be played with and stretched to accommodate that. So when we're talking about genre, there's that whole range of possibilities. And if we were to map some magical girl stuff then into that early genre stuff, we'd be looking at like Sailor Moon is kind of a big classic touchstone for people. And as we go later, we get into things like Puella Magica Madoka, which is number 2 on my media recommendation list, because it is definitely the heart and soul of Girl by Moonlight, my game that I'm designing. But also stuff like Steven Universe, which should also be on your list. It's a really good Western kind of taking on of the magical girl genre, and one that does kind of spoof on it a little bit, in that there's like, or the Crystal Gems, or these cool like alien ancient warrior ladies, and then there's Steven, who's a dumpy little like kid. Like he's this tiny roly-poly kid. But of course he is the hero of the show, and he's very heartfelt and very much in line with the genre, but in a way that kind of stands out and is interesting, and that it makes a statement in putting him in there of being like, cool, even this little boy, he's not that little, but anyways, even this boy is also a magical. And there's a lot of like queer content in that show that is very interesting. So, magical girl stuff. Why is it important? Why would I make a game that uses this kind of genre as a framework? Because I'm not using it in the sense of canon. Like, I'm not trying to make things map to like it's the Sailor Moon game or whatever. I'm not trying to make like a licensed magical girl game. It's the kind of like feminist core of the genre, as the like even Sailor Moon has a lot of queer characters, or like gender bendy, like very difficult for the Western translators to handle characters.
Sorry, they're cousins now.
right? Like it was pretty avant-garde even for its time, and so the genre has consistently been pushing the space of what kind of like heroism can look like. It has a focus on emotions rather than action. You know, it's creating this tradition that values classically feminine things and makes those sources of like heroic power. So it's a power fantasy for like femme stuff, which is also really important as a kind of cultural artifact for its time and place. So all of that to say, Girl by Moonlight, while it is a magical girl game, it is using that to explore like queer identities, the value of like found or chosen family, kind of like being good friends. The game like is structured in a way that forces you to treat each other well and be good friends. And so it's taking this kind of generally known genre, and I'm picking and choosing little bits of it because it's my take on it. Ultimately, it's my interpretation of what is interesting and matters about the genre. It's also super fucking dark because it's a Forged in the Dark game, and it doesn't, you know, like it's still there. It's still in there. And also, I've taken my primary source, I would say, is Madoka, which is a really dark, gritty magical girl show that problematizes a lot of the kind of things that we would normally take for granted, like where their power comes from or what it means to be this kind of heroic figure. Like it's much more of a martyrdom in that show, and I found that really fascinating. It also has a lot to say about how like the world in general preys upon and benefits off of like young girls and their femininity. Yeah. So I wanted to make this super like cynical, revisionist, magical girl game that is about like queer stuff and all of this very like about trans shit and transgressive stuff in general, and like relationship anarchy and all these other things. There's all these inserts of like my own politics into it because you know I got shit to say, and this is my medium in which to say it.
I think that's one of the things that we've seen pop up in a few interviews is basically people are saying, you know, regardless of your original intention, like a lot of times your personal politics are going to pop up in the games you make and the games you run and that sort of stuff. Because I mean, it informs a lot of how you see things.
Yeah, like you can't help but have your fingerprint on it,
right?
And so, yeah, in the case of this game, I was just like, oh, this is my like. It's like a soapbox. Someone's just like, here, say whatever you want. And I'm like, oh, word? Okay. And so I'm very excited to have an opportunity to just be like, these are all my opinions about like both games themselves. Like, here's how you should play. Here are ways to make your game not boring. Like your, you know, session at the table or whatever. Here's how to avoid playing games wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a reason I wanted to have a really structured game. With the distinct like phases. I wanted to keep things moving. I wanted to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that, and this is true of John's original design for Blades, there's just like all of these stupid things that people do when playing role-playing games that he and I and a lot of other people just fucking hate. And it's just like the game doesn't let you play them. The game doesn't let you do the stuff that sucks. It forces you to do the good things in games and then to cut like everything else out. Which is what I love about Blades, is that it's just like, no. It just says no to you, basically. You're like, I want to have a scene where no. You're stealing things now. You're scoundrels, you're stealing things. You want to do something else? That comes later. It's going to cost you. Like, that's a really beautiful statement in my mind about role-playing games of just like, yo, just fucking make it interesting or go home. Like, don't waste everyone's time with your soliloquy about how cool your character is and that their eyes are gray. Like, no one gives a shit. You know?
Yeah. No, I gotta say, being able to skip like the 2 hours of setup before your actual heist and just like, okay, so we pull up and oh wait, shit's going bad is like, it immediately endeared me to Blades. I mean, we've been
like, what a relief, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, because the touchdown I always use is like that first session of D&D that everybody runs when they're like 15 or 16, the first time they ever play it, and all of your teenage friends are just sitting in a tavern like posturing at each other.
Oh god, yeah.
I drink angstily and look at all of the rest of the party.
Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to be Strider in the corner, like smoking the pipe and not talking to anybody, and nobody's willing to be the hobbits. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There are so many bad habits that are kind of endemic in the culture of gaming. And the only way that we can address those is to make games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the only way you're going to communicate with all these people. Or at least really communicate with their play directly.
Right. You have to specifically angle mechanics for that. And then,
just don't let them play wrong. Give them a box, and it's like, you got to fit through this box. You got to cut away everything that doesn't fit through this box.
Yep.
Oh, I was watching the Office Hours that you were on yesterday, and one of the quotes that you had that kind of really stood out to me was trying to be exhaustingly specific and clear when writing the rules, and that was just something that I found real interesting about.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, that is born of playing games in the local kind of culture, like the Pacific Northwest gaming culture, and specifically also like Adam and a couple other folks that I play with. Adam especially is like stubbornly rules as written to the point where he will he will do things that he knows are bad because the game tells him to, and he'll just be like, this is what it says to do. This is the game, and if we're not doing this, we're not playing the game, is his attitude. And occasionally that creates problems, but by and large, I think it is an appropriate attitude to approach games with. And like, the other reason I have these feelings is that I worked in like video game development as a quality analyst, which is to say I ran testing for a feature. I was like middle management in games. And I had to write fucking test scripts that were like, go to this screen, push this button to navigate to this thing, do this, like very, very specific stuff.
And homebrewing the script.
And had to talk to designers and be like, yo, you can't make this way because then it creates this and these exceptions or these conflicts or is redundant with this thing and blah, blah, blah. There's just been so much of my like life experience around games that has pushed me towards being an exacting, awful bastard, basically. Just being like the worst fucking kind of person. And so like that's in me, and that's part of how I approach playing games, and I've discovered also writing games. Is that I just want to be a control freak and just be like, you do exactly these things. This is how you play. If you do anything else, it's wrong. Don't. Here's what it is. If you're doing it wrong, it's probably that I'm not explaining it right, is my attitude. And that's just not actually true, is something I've needed to realize. It's just like, people are going to do it wrong, even if I write my rules perfectly. And this is something we see all the time. Like, I play fucking Magic the Gathering, and that is the most exactly written game I can name. And people still fuck up playing the cards, even though they do literally what they say, and they say exactly what they mean. And people misinterpret them because they are hopeful or, whatever else all the time. It's just like, oh, well, it would be nice for me if it worked. I'm going to pretend it does. I'm going to read it favorably for the outcome I want. And this is like very natural human behavior. And like, we need to account for that when we're writing rules and hedge against it as best we can, and also know that it's going to come up. So it's been difficult coming to terms with that sometimes. I'm just like, but if I could just write it better,
Well, yeah, I feel like that's the best way to. I mean, obviously, it's the best way to maintain, to sort of generalize the play experience that you want somebody to get out of your game, right? But all at the same time, if they don't understand the rules, if the rule somehow like goes wrong on them, right? Like, they don't understand it, they don't read it correctly, they don't like that. As a Magic the Gathering player myself, like, if I have to sit there and look at that card for more than a couple seconds before I play it, that experience is somehow diminished for me. And so, like,
it creates a barrier to play also.
Exactly. And in Magic, it's not as big a deal because like half the game is like figuring out how this card goes with this card and this card.
That is the game. role-playing games, that's not the case, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
Exactly.
And so there is a poetry to it. There is that writing exercise of writes very dense language really eloquently to try to like fit it onto the fucking sheet. In the case of like special abilities for playbooks and all this kind of stuff, but also just to make it like tolerable as a thing to read.
Yeah.
And so like you need to write rules cleanly and eloquently, as well as accurately, and like there's a lot of competing elements there. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. And as someone with not a lot of like I'm not, I don't have like a bachelor's degree or whatever. I'm not like a really practiced writer in the way that a lot of like higher education tend to be. I have had to fumble through that very clumsily and figure it out, and haven't figured it out.
Words are hard.
There are lots of them to choose from, and how do you know you got the right ones?
Yeah, I mean, even after you put some together, it's not like they're the right ones or the ones that you are sure you want to use. Because I remember you and on the Office Hours episode that we've already referenced with you and Adam, you two talked about sort of the voice that's in a lot of RPGs. And what that means to how the rules are written and how people interact with the rules, and how too much of it can make people bounce off, but maybe too little doesn't engage them properly.
Right, or your game comes across flat or doesn't carry an identity with it. Yeah, there's a tension there. And yeah, like in terms of Girl by Moonlight, it's written pretty flatly. But my hope is that there are enough inserts of provocative text. Mostly the strategy I've chosen has been one of asking questions. And so rather than have like the Apocalypse World thing where you've got this like really distinct voice through all of the like rules text, the names of the moves, all this kind of, it's like suffused with this style. Instead, the thing that I have done is that most of the special abilities for characters and stuff, like they'll have at least one or two per playbook that ask questions of you as part of the. So it's like, here's a mechanical thing. Why in the fiction is that a thing? Like, you tell me. You give me the style. You give me the voice. But that it is designed to elicit that performance out of people. So asking hopefully provocative questions or leading questions, or so I'm trying to use that kind of approach to it.
Yeah, that's an art form to itself. That sort of
figuring out the right questions to ask. Has been a thing.
I don't want to. I keep talking. Everybody else can ask questions.
That's kind of what an interview is for. Everybody.
Well, yeah, but I don't want to take. I feel like I'm monopolizing. I just have a bunch of questions popping.
No, you're good. You're good. Questions are good.
Going to sweep up at the end. She's just going to wait until you all fall asleep, and then be like, "All right, let the real interview come in."
I'm having it's a machine gun shaped like a question mark. I'm like, "You ready for this?" And just...
Zach, unfortunately, I'm going to play a card that says interrupt. So real quick, I'm going to ask interrupt. So we got a question from chat that I wanted to real quick. Canadian Soy Sauce asks, "What do you listen to while writing, Andrew, if anything?"
Sorry, can we repeat? Sorry, two people talking.
Go back.
Canadian Soy Sauce asks, "What do you listen to while writing, Andrew, if anything?"
I mean, I have my playlists of music that I listen to. I also like distract myself with like garbage Twitch videos and stuff all the time. Like it's actually honestly a pretty bad habit. I am most productive when I'm just listening to music. And my musical taste is pretty varied, but I have developed this bad habit of like wanting to absorb too much media at once. And so I'll like be listening to music and have a Twitch stream going and be trying to write. It's not good. Which is part of why it was so helpful to actually stream while I was game developing, because it just like forced me to be on task, because there were people there watching, and I was like, well, I gotta be designing this thing and I gotta be talking. Like, I can't be fucking around doing other stuff. It's not allowed. Which it was super helpful for someone with my particular weird kind of work ethic, where occasionally I will get super jazzed about wanting to work, and I will work for like 6 hours straight and get a bunch done. But on other days, it's just like, I don't know, it's this feeling of like trying to like thread a needle with my concentration, and I'm just constantly missing. Like, can't even, you know, like my mind refuses to settle on a task. It just wants to slip off and skate to one side or the other. And on those days is when I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I'll just surround myself with distractions and kind of stare at the wall. As you imagine, I don't get a lot done.
I mean, you got to take breaks sometimes too. It can be tough to have that, you know, kind of like work on the schedule. Like, I don't know, people say like there's a Pomodoro thing, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm. No, like I totally feel that, because I'll just be like staring blankly at a page for like 2 days straight, and then on the third day, like boom, there's an idea, and then it all just comes out, and I write a whole thing. I figure out a mechanic. I, you know, do whatever. So, yeah. Structuring my productivity more, I think, is a goal that I have. But it's a struggle kind of across my life generally, and
same.
You know, I would love for my workflow to be like publish a game every year, just like one a year.
That'd be cool.
Make a game. That would be ideal. That would be beautiful. So that's a pipe dream.
So, you said that streaming while working, not like streaming yourself working, can be like a thing beneficial to you. So do you like try to like schedule, like I'm going to stream for 2 hours on Thursday nights or whatever?
Yeah.
Or do you just stream when the inspiration strikes you?
So when I was doing that, which was during the kind of like churning out stuff phase of the game, it was on a schedule. It was like once or twice a week. At specific times, I would sit down and just like bring up chat and be like, cool, I have my list of stuff I need to finish, because it was very clear cut at that point. It was like, here's my planned 7 character playbooks. Here is my planned 4 kind of crew books. I need to get through all of this. I need to write X amount of special abilities for them. I need to figure out some special mechanics for each individual crew, et cetera, et cetera. Like, for that phase, I could just work and kind of move linearly through a set of tasks. And so that's when I was doing that. But now I'm in that weird amorphous space of testing and getting feedback and like waiting for things, and needing to schedule things, and not having it such a clear cut kind of just like block of marble to chip away at, as it were. It's just not there anymore. And so it's a lot stranger to structure my time around that. And I just don't feel confident being like, yeah, I'm going to stream every week and work on this game, because sometimes there isn't anything to do, and I'm just waiting for feedback to come in.
Right.
Yeah. Because you're not just slinging content anymore. You're waiting to fit it all back together in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, waiting for problems to come up so I can squash them, that kind of thing. So
cool.
And this is it's all new to me, so I'm kind of discovering what this phase of production looks like for me as I go through it, which is a special kind of hell. Right? Just like not knowing everything that you need to do. Oh, we built this bridge, but then we forgot we didn't build a foundation for the struts that go into the water. We didn't know we needed to yet, so now we're going to have to go do that. Okay, well, we got to take this whole bridge apart, and we're going to pour some concrete, and then we'll rebuild the bridge. Okay, we're going to get it this time. And it's like, oh, cables to suspend. Shit. You know, it's very much that feeling. And then halfway through, I'm like, this bridge to one place needs to be a bridge to somewhere else.
Oh, God.
It's a whole adventure.
But it's magical.
And that's the important part.
And there are
One
girls.
day.
So, yeah.
Zach, did you still have your question in mind?
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll be sort of swinging back a little bit. It goes back to the idea of the sort of tech writing version of game language, right? The precision and the directness, and the idea that because this isn't a game about it's not a licensed property game. It's not like a Sailor Moon game or a Madoka Magica game, but it is a game about a genre of thing with very strong visuals and sort of very strong central themes and things that people are going to recognize. Do you feel like that's probably going to be enough to carry that voice through the game for you?
Yeah, I mean, folks are going to bring a lot to it, but I don't know if it's helpful that they do.
Okay.
There's some stuff I've been kind of chewing on with regards to, like, how do I discourage people from bringing a bunch of baggage into my game with them that has nothing to do with it? Because what I want to encourage folks to do is to make up their own shit. That has, like, always been the idea. And so this is why mine is a Blades hack that does not include a setting. There is no, and it's like something I go on a tiny rant about it in my playtest document as well, about how the game is incompatible with any sense like a canon or authenticity. It does not fit in my game for you to play that way, because what I see that doing is limiting people's kind of general idea space out the gate. They come with a bunch of preconceptions that already kind of lock them into a certain path. Or even worse, one person comes in with a bunch of preconceptions, and a bunch of other people are like, I've never seen a magical girl. And then they're like, well, let me tell you, it's like this and this and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like one person's voice takes over. Or they make a bunch of references that no one gets. It's actually like really destructive to the kind of fundamentals of roleplay, which are like conversation, active listening, people's ideas being able to carry weight on the merits. All of those ideas about like, well, it has to be a certain way or having these preconceptions are anathema to what I view as like the core of the hobby. So while I want people to be excited about the genre, I want them to be excited about authorship within it, as opposed to being fans. That all being said, in the course of testing and talking to a lot of people that I trust, come around on the idea that I do probably need to include some pre-generated content for the game. And so what that's going to look like now is authored this set of like, roadmaps to building your own shit. And those are great for like campaign play and stuff like that. One's doing a shot, or if you just don't feel like it on a particular time, there's going to be for each, the crew books are all called series playbooks, and they include setting and stuff like that. So for each series, there is going to be a world that I author, a setting that I author with a set of pre-gen characters that can go in it. So there's just going to be like a bundle for each one, so people can engage with it on whatever level they want. And my encouragement in the text of the book for anyone that has an idea of like, I really want to play like a certain kind of canon or whatever, I'll be like, cool, here's mine. This I know will work. Like, play this. And that way it's not any one person's voice taking precedence except mine, which is a voice that I trust, and I'm not at the table to keep talking. So I can never ruin their game because they'll end up remixing it and changing it anyways. But at least out the gate, it will be free of whatever horseshit they're going to bring. It'll just be my bullshit, which I can control for. So that's the new strategy. But yeah, there is that kind of bugbear of canon for me. It's definitely something that I think about a lot and have opinions about.
That's actually really interesting, because that feels more, and this is purely coming from like experience with basic Blades, right? That feels almost more like an apocalypse, powered by the apocalypse thing, where like we have a genre, we're generating a world out of it, instead of Blades, which was like, this is the thing, and you need to know this thing, you need to know this setting so that you can like do the heists and the players can drive towards the things and all that. So that's interesting to me.
Here's where I want to be able to split into two people and have these two parallel tracks of interview going, because I want to point that I have multiple divergences from. So
okay.
There's a bit about setting in Blades that I really want to talk about.
Okay.
But let's take a couple steps back. So one, Girl by Moonlight started as an apocalypse.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
And then I read Blades and was like, oh, I see that. One, John shares a lot of my opinions on stuff. Two, he has already solved a bunch of problems that I solved. And three, what the fuck am I doing? And so I just did everything. Blades hack now. But I was excited to see how much so there has been this perception of Blade as like, yeah, like Blades, you want to like hack the poetry layer or whatever else. Like there's a whole approach around that, which I'm not disparaging in these statements, but I was like, cool, okay, that's like an obvious way to do it. What's a weird way I can do it? Or like what's a more kind of what are some ways that I can present a broader range of play, which is why I've chosen to have the 4 series playbooks and have them each include a kind of rough like setting building process within them. They each have a different tone as well, because there's a bunch of interesting stuff in Blades where John talks about like having a dial on tone based on like how consequential consequences are and things like that. I was like, yeah, that's cool. I can just do that dialing for you and present you with these 4 different kind of tone, setting, etc. bundles. And there were like a bunch of different games that I wanted to make kind of all at once that were sufficiently close together that it didn't make sense to make 4 different games.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, it felt very... I don't know. It didn't feel to me that it had to be so that I could only like make a Blades hack and have it formally be like totally equivalent to Blades in the Dark, if that makes sense. Blades ultimately is still an Apocalypse World hack in a lot of ways. It still relies on a lot of the same tech. It just has one move, and the move is when you do an action, and then there's like this. It's a big move, but that is kind of the one move in the game. But it's still very much an Apocalypse World style move where there's the like the 7 to 9 result. It's all kind of codified a little bit differently, but structurally it functions very much the same. And like the way that character advances and stuff work, again, very, very similar. There are some window dressing elements that I think a lot of people think of as being kind of indelible from like Apocalypse World, or similarly there's stuff in Blades that people think is kind of like fundamental to it. But I think at a sufficiently cut up and disassembled level, there are lots of things that you can remove that maybe don't seem intuitive as like being modular or removable. And so that's been motivating a lot of my design decisions from the right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hate to cut in real quick.
We're having some audio stuff.
Yeah, I was about to say I'm getting reports from some people in chat that the audio seems to be cutting out towards the end of sentences. So you may want to check the Discord settings and see if there's like a automatic volume gate thing that's going on or something. It's the only thing I could think of.
Automatic gain control. That seems bad. I just want to be super loud.
I'm not shouting. This is my normal volume.
Attenuation is off. Oh, but it's attenuating me when others speak. That's not okay. I want to talk over all of you.
That's
fair.
That's
okay.
That's the general goal for this. So please,
yeah. I think we have probably addressed this. Hopefully,
awesome.
Unless it's just thresholding, in which I can't control. So
yeah,
sorry. I'll get real close to my mic and NPR it. Hello.
Nice. Yes.
Welcome to the ASMR Fun Hour. My name's Aaron, and I'll be here to read you some sheet music from some smooth jazz.
You can hear the inner workings of my mouth echoing off of itself. I'm so close to the microphone.
That's a
okay.
Now I feel thirsty.
Okay, so before we took that trip, which is very interesting, and I actually have some questions about. We were talking. You said you wanted to talk about setting in Blades as well.
Yeah,
we're going to visit the other fork first.
Yeah, the alternate timeline where I answered this other thing first.
Yes,
it's really important to talk about setting with Blades because the setting like you can't play Blades in the Dark in a different setting. It is integral to the mechanics as they exist in Blades. Which is to say that John didn't just make up a bunch of shit for no reason. There is a lot of stuff in the game setting that feeds back into the mechanics in really productive and important ways, and that reinforces a lot of the kind of broader design choices about the kinds of stories you get, which, you know, it's very, very important. So stuff like, everything's really tightly interwoven, but let's try to break it down. So important elements of the setting. You're in a world that you're in a post-apocalyptic setting where there are ghosts. And anytime someone dies, they make a ghost. The prevailing culture that you live in hates ghosts. They box them out using a special magic bubble that they've made. This bubble that they've made is powered by the blood of giant demonic sea monsters. It is it also traps ghosts in, so they have special police who go find ghosts and destroy ghosts.
I mean, this all sounds pretty standard to me.
In a special way so that you don't make a ghost. Yeah. And they have these cool crows that can, every time someone dies, they know, they go to it, they ring a special bell. There's all this shit that's basically like, don't fucking kill people. Don't do it. It's bad. Yeah. It's going to be bad for you. Also, you can't escape. Because if you can't just leave town, because you go outside, you're fucked. Also, really don't kill people, because their ghosts will haunt you. If you dispose of the body improperly, it's going to go badly for you. Like, all of this shit makes it so, because, like, he didn't want a game where people casually kill people. He didn't want a game where people do crimes and then run away, right? Like, every action is so much more consequential because of the setting, and that shit all fucking ties together.
Yeah.
And, like, the tech in the game is all in there doing stuff. It's not just like, oh yeah, and you can be a hacker, with, like, without giving you, like, fundamentally setting affecting stuff to hack. It's not just like, oh yeah, there are computers and you can, like, get into this door that's locked. It's like, no, there's, like, the whole city is fundamentally dependent on this weird technology to keep it functioning. Otherwise, we're just out in the Deadlands. Like, it's deeply integrated with its setting material in a lot of ways that are really, really important and deliberately made in order to reinforce certain approaches to play and certain kinds of consequences, and, like, all of those decisions really matter. And it makes the game sing. You know, like, you can take that shit out and it can work, but, like, the game was not successful because it just worked. Like, a lot of games just work. This game has an artistic vision, has a fucking voice. It has it just has a clear tone. It has an expression. And without all of that stuff, you cut the game's arms and legs off. You really limit how good it can be without that stuff. So I feel very strongly on this topic, and I think that if you are going to hack Blades, you need to develop an equally integrated setting. And if you're changing mechanics, you got to reflect those mechanical changes in your setting. And those two, don't think of them as being separate. Think of them as being mutually supporting, like two walls of a house. You don't just build the one wall and then you're like, cool, we built this one wall and we have a roof, and then we'll build this other wall later. Like, build the walls. You put the roof on it. The two, are interdependent, and you can't just gut one and then still play. And if you're trying to make an equivalent thing, really think about how big of a job that is. Like, I know that Fraser has a lot of work ahead of him for Hack the Planet, beyond just, like, recoloring some playbooks and stuff. He's got to make a setting and then make that setting matter, and then make the playbooks engage with the parts of that setting that matter in meaningful ways that also create opportunities that also, because, like, that's the other really important thing about all of the playbooks, is that they all provide exceptions to the problems of the setting that create opportunities for you to do crimes. And those steps, like, it's real easy to miss that. It's real easy to just design a stuff where it's like, they do a cool thing. They can fly. And you're like, great. Why does it matter that they can fly? So very carefully selecting and editing and curating what you're on about in your game or in any fucking piece of expression is just so important. I feel like that will be on my tombstone or something. How strong but just like fucking think about what you're doing and putting into your art and make it be there for a reason. This is equally true of stuff like politics, right? If we wanted to talk about like people bringing their political voice or their personal politics into stuff without thinking, like, yeah, every time you name characters a certain way or provide a list of names or, you know, make your setting a fucking European medieval analog, you're saying something. You're saying something that other people have said really loudly for a long time and such that you do it without thinking. But yeah, people gotta look at those choices and really think about it. And it's hard work. You can't be lazy with this stuff. Yeah, if everyone were lazy about game design, we would just have a million different versions of D&D.
It's true. I mean, we almost do.
And we already do, is the low-key shade I'm throwing.
Nice. Well, yeah.
A lot of those
I'll just drag that to the
fucking
surface.
Lazy.
Yeah. It's fun. That's really funny that you bring that up because I can actually confirm a lot of what you said specifically about Blaze in the Dark. I got a chance with these two and then our other sort of main stream group to run a Blades game. It's been a while now. And I'd never played it before. I sort of just got the book, opened it up, like, this is super cool. These folks had played it before, but I'd never played or run it before. And so I decided I'm going to, like, try a different setting with this because this is cool, but I'm not super into it. And so I sort of threw this thing together that was, like, this, like, post-Soviet capitalist dystopia where the actual, like, currency was the souls of the workers and these things. And it worked. I mean, it was a thing that we played and we had fun with. But it definitely turned into a murder circus very quickly because I had no controls on that
because that
direction of the game.
Heat accumulation stuff and the severity of murder mattering. Like, yeah, totally. And you know, I hope it did not feel when I was going on my rant.
No,
I was calling you out because
no.
That kind of bullshit. But yeah, exactly. Like, as you find, right, like, without these bits that might seem purely kind of surface or purely poetry, they're bearing some load for the game. It's really interesting in that way, which I think, like, if you look at other games kind of in its generation, like if we go back a step and look at Apocalypse World or all these other things, that stuff exists. It's maybe a little harder to parse. There are some notions of like how Vincent is just like, I know it doesn't make sense, but there are infinite bullets and gas. Just don't worry about it. But, you know, like, those kinds of things matter. A lot more of the setting is cooked into the moves in Apocalypse World, as opposed to existing in this kind of, like, broader, like, sandbox layer. But there are still some of those forces there where it's like there needs to be scarcity, there needs to be these other things, or the game kind of, the fiction of the game falls apart. And I think that's also really important. Like, you'll still be able to keep rolling dice, and the the mechanical bits will seem to function, but the story that you create will just get increasingly unhinged and dumb. Like, it'll just happen very quickly. It opened with them flashbanging and then fricasseeing an entire gang.
So, it got off the rails real fast.
Look, some stuff happened, you know, some words were said, somebody was a demon. It's really hard to keep track of stuff.
I mean, I love blowing things up in Blades in the Dark. It's very good fun. I do it at every opportunity I have as a player character. And it's, for me, it's in part because I know that it's really bad to do. And that it's going to, like, fuck us over super hard. And I'm just basically telling the GM, like, come at me. I'm going to blow stuff up. What are you going to do about it? Show me just how sharp your teeth are. Because, yeah, like, it should be really fucking bad. Because if someone were to blow... Okay, I mean, unless you pick your targets very carefully, I can just make a little political rant about how no one is talking about that fucking bomber in the States.
Oh, Jesus, right?
So like in most cases, I feel like I would be able to say if you blow stuff up in society, like it should matter. Clearly I'm wrong. It's really horrifying, but like it should fucking matter if people are exploding things, and at least in our made up world, that is reflected. And so that's a good thing, I guess.
Exploding things and people, like
yeah.
No.
We can make those rules okay. We can make the rules to where society acts or reality acts the way we want it to in our games.
Well, and this is the importance of fantasies like this, to be like, hey, yeah, things can, we can talk about these things in games. But sorry, that was like extremely dark and insensitive. But my mind made that connection, and it's fucking horrifying that like blowing stuff up should matter, and we have been taught through a lot of different media sources that it just doesn't. That's messed up.
That dovetails interestingly. Waypoint has a series this week about guns in games, and how we're super cavalier about that, and maybe we should reconsider, consider what we're doing.
And that's definitely a symptom of like where are most video games made. Not to like, I'm not trying to call y'all out personally or anything, but just like there's a certain culture, like a prevailing culture, and a lot of assumptions exist within that culture. Let me just interview myself for a bit here and say, Girl by Moonlight is also a way of me making a statement against all of this kind of shit, because it's a game where it's actually like most of the tools you have are not fighting things. And
that's cool.
And it's a game where you can like talk to the monsters and you can forgive them, and forgiving them is equally as effective as punching them.
That's cool.
Okay, I love the hell out of that.
That's awesome.
So the actions in this game are confess, forgive, perceive, express, defy, empathize, conceal. Like just reading. I'm sorry, I'm kind of geeking about your game, but just reading about like the way that you interact with the world.
How dare you?
Fascinating. And like so I don't know when I stumbled across the rules for this. It was a while ago, but I've been kind of like itching to get this on our virtual tabletop for quite some time, because it's tough not to just jump right into imagining where this is going with any sort of a game where you right up front you say that the powers of the way that you interact with the world, the tools that you're given to the players. And I'm sorry, that's just me being excited, but please continue with what you're saying.
I'm glad it's coming through, because that's the idea, is that I'm just like, I don't give the players good tools for doing violence. And there's some instruction in there about like not being kind to them when they resort to that, or pushing back against it when they do. Because so there are a couple of reasons. One, if we want to go back to genre, is that it's totally true to genre, is that in a lot of magical girl stuff, you don't see the characters just fucking rolling up and punching things. It's just not what there is, because that kind of shit exists in shonen, which is to say like anime for young boys. That is like the main stuff that it's about. It's about like working hard and developing skills and punching things. Those are like if I had to do a quick list of top threes, that's kind of what that's about. Whereas shoujo, which is anime for young girls, is mostly about making friends, building community, and having feelings. Those are like the main three activities that people are about. And so it's just like, it's just not how you go about shit in genre. And there's a bunch of stuff about the like gender coding of those approaches, which I think is really interesting and merits exploring. And I am excited and have always been really thrilled with the results when it's like, yeah, me and a bunch of like cisgendered dudes playing this magical girl game, which one of my first con games of it, in fact, my first con game of it was, like 3 white dudes, one dude of color, most of whom were like older, like probably like 40 years or older. And I didn't really know what to expect, but they took to it. And like, because of the mechanisms of the game giving them only that option, it was just like, yeah, of course. And like, they all bought in. They were great role players as well.
Nice.
But yeah, it was just like delightful to see that playing out. I was just like, yeah, your dudes describing hugging each other. Great. That's a win. I'll call that a win.
That's awesome.
Happy to encourage that kind of thing. And I think it's really important for folks, especially in role playing, to be pushed out of their comfort zones, to be given opportunities to empathize with people who are very different from them, because it's an ideal place to do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's what the game is all about. It's all about building empathy. That's what the hobby is all about, I should say. Because even if you're just playing a like Gary Stu self-insert in your fantasy role-playing game about murdering things, you still kind of have to practice empathy. You have to imagine what it would be like to be you in a different set of circumstances. And maybe the next time you'll imagine what it's like to be a cool, edgy, dark elf in a set of different circumstances. And then like 6 years down the line, you'll realize you're gay or trans or something. Not to speak too much from personal experience. But, you know, like, we hear those stories a lot. You see lots of people saying that kind of stuff. And it's totally for real, because it gives people an opportunity to develop understanding outside themselves. And I think it's a desperately needed skill set, particularly in our day and age, particularly in North America.
It's very true to the way it worked for me. Like, being able to explore, like, being a female character and stuff. And I was like, oh, wait. No, wait, this is pretty good. And then, so I didn't actually realize it until the interview with John about, you know, we sort of talked about your life and your experiences influencing the way you run games too. And the mega campaign first season that I ran, it was like a lot of body horror stuff. And I was just kind of coming to terms with the whole, hey, I'm trans thing. And like, I didn't realize it until he said something. I was like, oh, huh, that's something.
Yep, those things we do without thinking or fully thinking through, can be really telling.
But
like of course, right? Of course, that's the thing.
Yeah.
When you're like, I'm going to imagine the worst thing possible, it's like, it's got to be born of your experience.
Yeah,
it makes complete sense.
Your brain spiders make the best webs.
That's strong.
That's a good one.
That's strong.
But going back to what you're saying about you know, community building, and before we started the stream, you were saying community building is not traditionally a male coded sort of thing,
like set of labor.
Yeah.
Totally.
What? I guess I have like a two-parter. It's like, what can we do to, I guess, make it less, not gender, you know, stigmatized or stereotyped or anything, but what can we do to make that a more appealing thing? And also, how can we make communities more, I guess, queer and inclusive?
So I'll start with the first bit because I think it's the easier one to answer. People need to, it's like, there's a certain element of like, if we recognize that community building is work, because it fucking is, it's a lot of work. We then have to look at like, how is this work valued? And that can come across both in terms of like, how much do people get paid to do it? Which is to say, usually nothing. It's almost always volunteer based.
Yep.
It's generally women doing it, or like femme-coded people of various types. And further to all of that, it is not afforded any status. It is not viewed as like a thing that is like exciting or cool to be a part of. It is not shown as being like it. We see how unrewarding it is because people do that work. They are given nothing. It is ignored. They are silenced. Their needs are not, you know, heeded, or, you know, they aren't given good support. So basically, if you are a dude and you see someone else doing organizing, thank them. Thank them as publicly as you can. Provide, you know, like monetary or whatever other kinds of support you can. Get on board. If you're attending a convention or something like that, don't just be like, hey, yeah, thanks for organizing at the end. Maybe get involved in advance of it. Because this is generally like, when the kind of shit does come up, it's usually an afterthought. I see a lot of folks who do organizing. They put in a ton of work. They're exhausted when the event happens, but they're there, and people are like, "Hey, thanks for organizing. That's cool." Pat on the back. And it's just like, that doesn't really mean very much. Like, put either your money or your time or your labor where your mouth is, because a lot of people are benefiting off of these spaces that are being organized and set up and generated by people. So like, yeah, getting involved, uplifting and rewarding and supporting those who are already doing it, listening to them, doing what they tell you to do. Be a fucking like useless, stubborn baby at events who refuses to accommodate the needs of organizers.
Oh, jeez.
Don't be a bad actor in those places. Like, there's so much stuff that people can do, and I think the most important one is to like pay attention to the work, acknowledge the work, and then everything else will start flowing from that. Like, when a plumber comes and fixes your plumbing, you're grateful because you didn't have water, and then now you have water again, and like people notice that kind of shit. Like, there's a certain category of work that we are trained to do a good job, like lauding and accepting and supporting, and then there's this whole other band of work that we ignore. So stop ignoring it, I think, is the first and most important step. As for how to make spaces more queer inclusive, I think having spaces be less top down is a really good start. Having lots of like flat ground level organizations, fixing the toxic behavior of other people, and those people being motivated to do that themselves is really important. Queer people never want to show up and then fucking teach everyone how to be nice to them. That's a bunch of horseshit. In my own life, I would rather be invisible and unacknowledged than need to teach everyone how to treat me respectfully.
Having to pronounce people over the head gets real old real fast.
Fucking exhausting. And like, that's a structural problem. That's not my problem. That problem exists on this enormous scale that I will never solve. Like, it is impossible for any one queer person, or even for queer people even if they all got together, the whole queer agenda were to join forces and their shady cabals and actually march into the streets with their legions of queer soldiers. We're a minority within the kind of broader population.
Yeah.
And so like, we are not going to solve these problems because they're enormous, huge, structural. So everyone else doing a lot of that work to pave the way is what's going to make it easier. We have to do a bunch of work just to show up. And so anything that makes that bit of work easier means that we do it. It'll be more worth our time, because we do all that work to show up and then still go through the same roll of the dice that everyone else does when they show up to anything, where it's like, maybe you have a bad time, maybe you have a good time, maybe no one else shows up, like all those problems still exist, plus this extra load of horseshit. So getting those other barriers out of the way are going to be really helpful. And I think that small scale organizations are a really good way. Like, I would love for there community spaces that supported the hobby or featured the hobby, and just like increasing the diversity of people in the spaces will mean that everyone will be on better behavior, and that toxic masculinity doesn't kind of pervade in the way that it has historically within the hobby.
Definitely.
And like, I don't know, queer people, we're out here, we're in games, like we're just doing our own games, and like maybe we're not in your games, and maybe we prefer it that way for now, until the general you that I don't know who I'm speaking to on this topic, because like y'all seem pretty cool, but like if there aren't queer people in your games, don't be like, oh, those queer people never show up to my games. Be like,
figure out why
maybe not. Or like, if there aren't any, like, we're all white here from what I can see, maybe someone's camera is doing some tricks for me, but like, get some people of color in your games. Think about how they might be barred from inclusion or might have barriers put in front of them. If you are organizing an event, advertise broadly, try to bring communities in, because a general diversity of people is going to make everyone feel better about being involved.
Absolutely.
So that's my very vague, floaty idea of how to solve all these problems. In terms of like, like what to do right now, I don't know. It's hard. It's a fucking hard problem to solve. And I think the most salient thing I said in all of that is that there is like this massive structural thing, and no one of us or even all of us banded together are going to crunch that problem and fix it. We need to have some giant robot that does that for us. Like, it's just hard. It's just like brutal and hard and sad.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, it just sucks right now. There's problems, and we're not going to solve them in my lifetime. And like, you just got to accept that and just like try your best. I don't know. It's dark. That's why I made this really dark, cynical game about all this shit. Like, the game isn't like, there's hope, yay, you're gonna solve it. It's like, unless you are literally, you cannot fight these problems. That's basically what the game says.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it also kind of says that like community is magic and like friendship is magic. That's still there, but like, it's not a very optimistic game that I have made. I've realized I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, this is me. This is what I feel.
Well, it's an expression, right? It's your brain spiders making that web. So.
Yes. And I mean, there are degrees of it. There's one playbook kind of hopeful.
Kind of.
One kind of.
Yeah. I mean, you still got to work for it. You still got to work really hard, but
like a third of a total of like a third of a playbook is Oh.
I just call it how I see it, you know.
I totally get that though. Like, even as a like white cishet dude who's never had that sort of barrier to entry, like, there are spaces in our hobby that are super toxic, and I can't even imagine trying to walk in there as somebody who didn't look like me and present like me.
Yeah, like you got that extra layer of armor to keep you, or like cloak of invisibility. I don't know what
something like that
here. But yeah, like
disguise self.
Yeah,
you
being aware of stuff can be just as much of a curse though, because you can't unsee it.
Yeah,
you know, like, I acknowledge that it's gross for everyone.
Yeah,
it's just whether or not you like perceive that is what is happening or not.
One thing that does make me hopeful that I really like, and that's coming out in these interviews as we do them, and in the hobby more broadly, is that it is, in some large part, not universally, but in some large part, it is people with some clear presentation or people who are from marginalized communities are making games now, and those are going to catch on. They, in some cases, they already have, and so you have a bunch of cishet white dudes playing a game by somebody who is not a cishet white dude in some way.
Yeah, like, thank God for Avery Alder, right? Like, the most successful Apocalypse World hack that I can name, like probably even outshining Apocalypse World itself, is Monster Hearts, a game by a trans woman about being queer teenagers. Like, thank fucking God.
And it's amazing.
And like, yeah, it stands on its merits. It is not just is nothing but just how good it is.
Yeah.
That got it there. So yeah. People want to see that shit, right? Like, Black Panther is fucking is making hella money. Like, obviously people want this stuff.
Fuck, that movie was good.
So we just need to keep giving it to them and keep flooding the market with this shit until it's just super normal and boring. I would love for no one to bat an eye about a girl role-playing game.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
I think part of that also comes back to, you know, your lived experiences, like we talked about, influencing the games you make, because if these are people who are underrepresented in the community, it's going to be like this breath of fresh air. It's not going to be the same old cookie cutter bullshit you play all the time. Yeah. So somebody who's looking for something new, and, you know, that they get exposed to this, and it's kind of like a double whammy where it's like, okay, this game is rad as shit, but also I'm kind of getting a small peek under the hood of like someone else's life, or, you know, into their brain, or just see things through their eyes for just a little bit, and that's kind of great.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. I mean, that's super cool. And I definitely have started approaching my sort of game consumption, at least going out and seeking out those sorts of games for that reason. But another thing that I started doing before I started consciously doing that is walking down the aisle, like the RPG aisle at my local place, and being like, okay, that one has orcs with guns, and that one has dudes with guns, and that one has like dinosaurs with guns. But what's this one over here that's like none of those things that I've never played before? That seems really cool. And I think there's that's the space that, and again, people of marginalized identities can make those sorts of games too, and do, but they also come at it from a direction that like us cishet white dudes who've been doing this for 20 years don't think about and won't build.
That experience has had a lot of time in the sun, a lot of opportunities to be explored, and yeah, like everyone's going to want to try something different. So don't feel like, for any would-be designers out there, don't feel like your experience doesn't rate, or that your story doesn't want to be heard, because fucking no white dude ever stopped thinking.
Not a single white dude has ever been like, does anybody not want to hear my bullshit? It's like, no, it's just going to happen.
I have something to say. The world must know of it. And like, as someone who was raised to be one of those people, I have the privilege of not having been taught that I need to like shut up all the time. I mean, a little bit, because I don't quite conform and didn't map to being like a man enough. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's a little easier for me than it is for a lot of other people. So like, there's a breaking down of a lot of self-imposed barriers for other folks who might feel that their voices aren't going to be heard, or you know, that people are gonna lash out at them or whatever. Like, it's okay, it's safe. Come over, play role-playing games. It's cool.
Yeah.
I'm monopolizing.
Shut up and do it. Shut up and do it. Roll the dice.
All right. So
I've got a whole stack of interrupt cards I'll play Adley. So
awesome. So going back to the stuff we were sort of talking about before we got on that very important tangent about the action words that you chose for your game, and sort of what they meant to the genre. One of these settings is a magical girls and giant robots.
Yes.
How does empathizing with a giant monster from inside a robot?
So I can list an example from play.
Okay, great.
It's definitely like, you are correct in feeling like that one skews more towards violence, which is absolutely correct. Generally, so there are. I'm just going to do a quick outline of what all the four of them are, and like how they all kind of walk together. So the magical girl is in giant robots one is on the is the second most violent. The really dark, edgy Madoka inspired one called In Darkest Night, that is violent. It's like both emotionally and physically, like just in all ways. And it's meant to lean into that kind of stuff. Still, the characters don't necessarily have a lot of tools for it, which is kind of the idea, is just like, there's a bunch of horrible violence. That's too bad for you. And similarly, for the one where you're in giant, like, things are going to be inclined to fight or like stomp around and ruin things, and you're kind of doing damage control, because you're not going out there to slay dragons. The dragons are coming to you, and you are protecting the last bastion of humanity. And then we'll talk about the other two later, because these two are kind of the ones that matter for this particular question. And so if we want to talk about how violence fits into that and how you might do nonviolent things, in the most recent session or second most recent, something like that. Anyways, we're doing a playtest of that playbook on actual play. And Andy, one of the players, her character, while piloting this big giant robot thing, did like this howl of anguish to like stall the thing, like, because you know, like, that shit matters. And so if people jump forward with like things that are emotionally driven, the mechanics support them in doing so. So she did like an empathize roll to be like, well, these things are probably sad too. Like, they are probably like far away from home or in some way like in a bad spot. And in this particular case, there were two big like Lamassu cat monster type things. But the two of them were separated by the like barrier of the last bastion. So one of them was stuck on the inside and the other was stuck on the outside and was trying to get to the other one, was kind of the framing that I was setting up. And so I think Andy kind of picked up on some of that. as well as just like stuff that was going on for her character, who was a very melancholy kind of character, who didn't want there to be violence, or like isn't inclined to do like big action sequences or whatever. And so this was her play, was to just do that, and she like knocked it out of the park. I think she like rolled a crit or something. It was super impactful, which was great. Felt really nice.
Yeah.
And then it was interesting as well because the other two characters in the crew were more inclined to just like fight things, and to see those different approaches come in, and that one of the other two then pivoted their strategy based on the decision Andy had made. So she kind of like led from the back in that way. There was a whole interesting process that unfolded in play, where both the players realized that there was a way to do it that wasn't the way they might have, tended towards based on other games and what kind of media broadly teaches us about how to solve problems. Yeah. And there's a whole conversation to be had here about how in Western storytelling, like what is the role of death and killing in Western storytelling? And it's like, that is the only way that we can conceptualize closure for a lot of conflict. In most Western storytelling is the villain dies. So in Disney, they fall off a cliff, right? No one like kills them, but in most movies, you fucking kill them. You guys don't agree about something, so someone has to fucking die. Like it escalates immediately. There's no story where it's like, yeah, we didn't agree, and like, so let's talk about Black Panther, right?
Okay.
And fucking spoiler, Killmonger dies at the end. Whoop-de-doo. Anyways, I can imagine a world in which it was like, he's like, yo, Killmonger, we gotta stop. Like, I win, I beat you up. Like, will you listen to me? And then Killmonger was like, yeah, okay. And they were like, cool, how can we come to a solution? How can we compromise here and like satisfy the people that you represent? Right? Like, that's never how it goes in Western storytelling. But it doesn't have to be so that killing is how we solve stuff. And as soon as we break out of that, we get into a space where we then need to talk about the more messy work of resolution, restitution, and reconciliation, which, historically not something that Western society is super jammed about.
Yeah.
We kind of just want to be colonizers and pave over things. So I actually found that when I watched that movie, I was kind of like, it felt like a bit of a sour note to me. I was just like, like this was an opportunity to do something better. And they elected to go with this kind of tired strat. Like, there's like a brief moment where T'Challa's like, yo, we could, like, I basically have magic in this building over here. I stabbed you with a thing. We can fix that. It's no problem. Like, I got shot in the spine and we fixed it like that. It was no big deal. And Killmonger's just like, nah. Just dies. Which, like he goes out really well, but that is the only direction that Western media sees for a story to take, is that if you do a bad thing, you have to die.
Yeah.
It's kind of fucked up. I would love to push an agenda that doesn't feature that kind of stuff as much as possible. And so I'm trying to chip away at that. But the thing is, even if I only give people tools for doing nonviolent things, they're going to, one, look for ways to spin it into violence, and two, they're going to be frustrated that they can't do anything. Because of what we are predisposed as an audience to see in fiction, and therefore what we will reflect back into games when we play them. And also, like, the general kind of tradition of role-playing games has just always been one of violence. Whether it's with words or other, or like seduce or manipulate in Apocalypse World is violence. Let's not like mince words here. It is horrifying. It's really nasty stuff. It's just like using leverage and manipulating and exploiting people. It's super gross.
Yeah.
And so I can't look at that and be like, cool, yeah, there's like a nonviolent solution, because it's like Apocalypse World is just steeped in violence. Everything in it is violent. Which is rad. Like, I love Apocalypse World, don't get me wrong, and like I'm all for murdering people who shit heels in games. Not in real life. Not hard like that. But,
not yet.
But I would love for there to be more stories that we could tell. And to at least give people an opportunity, if they want to tell that story, that there's some support for that.
Yeah.
So that's my very long-winded answer to your question that involved spoiling Black Panther.
I really do. I really appreciate a game that actually like encourages a non-violent solution to things, because I mean, if you look at most of them, it's one of those, okay, you've got 12 different skills to determine how you shoot people to death or break them in half with your bare hands, or like, you know, control their brain, which seems like one of the skeeviest.
That's a common one. Yeah, and it's really gross. That's actually way grosser than most of the other things.
Yeah, but like most of them, it's like, oh, well, I guess you can roll to talk to them and see how that goes, maybe. There's not like a support foundation for non-violent ways to solve things. And I think
so
more games need
that. Let's look at, to go one step deeper, let's talk about Burning Wheel.
Okay.
Burning Wheel has Duel of Wits.
Yep.
And you might think, cool, this is a compromise mechanic. That's interesting. It's a game about talking to people to get to solve things. It is scaled and okay, but it is the most fucking masculine framing of what conversation that I could imagine. You basically beat people with your thought hammers, and they have to listen to you. Like, clearly a white dude wrote this, is all I can say about it. It's just like, it maps to a certain experience of what talking is. And like nowhere in the game does it really talk about feelings, like emotions.
Yeah.
Emotions aren't referenced anywhere in the Burning Wheel text that I can see. At most we have beliefs, which are a deeply, like, they might include an element of how you feel, but they're this like very agency oriented, like forward striking kind of mechanic. And so there just isn't a lot in games that maps to like how anyone but men solve problems. And I think we desperately need stuff that, like, on a fundamental level skews against that and changes that, because that's just like, it's okay to be a dude, that's cool, it's just that like everyone else has to also do that, is what's fun. Right? There is no alternative presented, and so that's what I want to see. And that's what I'm trying to work at developing, but like, I gotta I was raised as a dude. Okay. I have a bunch of damage from that I carry with me and that I inject into the stuff that I make. So I can't get away from it, and I'm trying. I'm trying real hard to get away from it. It's really difficult. This is like a really big problem that the design space needs to acknowledge exists and then start tackling. And it's like really complicated and really deeply ingrained in how we look at the world and how we try to solve problems. But it would be nice to give ourselves the language and the tools in the game and practice them. Because like, I promise you that if there were like a mechanical encoding of nonviolent communication and de-escalation and like resolution strategies, and there was a game that was about that, people would retain that stuff, because they would have all this incentive to want to learn it and this cool arena in which to practice. And practice is very, very important for any kind of social behavior. And goodness knows we're not going to get opportunity to practice that in a lot of other places, or certainly not low stakes ones. And we're not going to get trained on it by our families and parents generally. And we can't go back in time to fix that. So I would love to work on writing a game that's about that stuff. I have this vague notion for kind of my next big game, which is going to be called Hell's Electorate, and it's going to be about hell bureaucracies. And it's basically going to be my experiences in like anarchist workers collectives and other like collective organizing structures, and all of my displeasure around that expressed inside of a game. It's going to be a very like bureaucratic, procedural like thing. I have this very like floaty idea of what I want it to be like.
If you ever need playtesters, hello.
But I think some people might be excited about it. It's kind of a weird notion, but that's like funny. Having a game that's just like all about communication and trying to like get things to happen within this like bureaucratic space, I think would be really fun. And to just, again, like get even more outside of the classic, like you go and fight things kind of game. Is a goal of mine, because there is that predisposition in me as a gamer to want to just like rehash that same shit. And it's like, God, it's easy to write those kinds of stories. It's so easy. Just like, cool, yeah, I hit it with a sword until it dies, and then I win. Nice. Super clean. Easy.
Nailed it.
Yeah, right? Like, everyone knows how to make that happen. But I would love to make a more muddy, uncomfortable, compromise-laden, conditional success kind of mechanic, and have that be what you got to push through, and like actually make people talk to each other, and actually make people listen to each other. Those are goals that I have. We'll see if I ever get there as a designer.
That's a challenge.
I think your mic might be cutting out a little bit again every now and then.
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Damn. Well, I guess I just need to be louder.
That's right.
I guess that's the right thing.
Shit on shit.
It's obviously the only solution, so make it happen.
Yeah. No, that's actually really interesting, as I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're absolutely right in that the duel of wits is basically just like, it's not a compromise mechanic, it's a social dominance mechanic. It is.
It's a very particular framing, and I had this realization while playing. I was just like, the only strategies that this permits you are these like I would feel like such a fucking asshole if I ever talked to someone like that. Right? And it's like, it's really grounded in rhetoric and like a very particular way of speaking that just feels so unnatural to me. When I come into that, I'm just like, cool. So there's no thing here where I ask them what their needs are and then like state my own, like there's a whole different way of talking to people that I have been taught to use as part of like some of my froofy anarchist social justice warrior bike shop life, and there's just like those skills cannot be applied inside this framework. And so I tried to write there's some stuff like that in my game. The Unlikely Hero, one of their gather info questions is what are this person's unmet needs. You can just ask like, okay, what do they really, what's wrong with them, basically. Like there's a move for that, like, because I think that kind of stuff is really important to just reframe people's thinking. And so team design is a great opportunity for you to just be like, no, think this way. Here, like, you are only permitted these tools, solve a problem now. Because people love solving problems, and the game constrains what they can do. So you can be in control, and you can just tell them, like, no, you have to use talking. You have to use asking questions to win this argument. Like, that would be cool.
Welcome to Box of Hammers.
I'm really excited about games like that. Yeah, and it's why I roll my eyes at D&D a lot.
That's fair.
Never do that around here.
Yeah, we've had some chafing.
It is a natural consequence, I think.
While you were describing sort of the typical way stuff gets implemented, I was thinking about all the times over my like life as a D&D player where I would hear different people or different groups talk about, man, I wish there was some sort of social mechanic in D&D, and then the thing that they wind up envisioning was always social combat. Like you always wind up like,
they have hit points and I beat them to death with my which like is a thin veneer of talking over. So
it's
the way we envision dialogue is violent, and so like a thing that I have done in my life is nonviolent communication training, and it was a very mind-opening experience to just like rethink talking to people and to start seeing all the ways in which we are incredibly brutal in how we are taught to communicate with people. And how little about communication most of what words we use are. They're mostly about just taking from people. And so the more weird shit you know, the more weird games you can design, is where I'm going with this. And I'm excited to get my chops and actually like be a designer and then design those things. I would really love nothing more than to do that.
That's very, very cool. Very, very cool.
So speaking of kind of design and coming up with, your own take on existing systems and hacks and stuff, did you find that having people in your social circle who were also game designers helped, or were you trying to distance yourself a little bit more from like their particular flavor of things to where it kind of made things more difficult, or how'd that go?
So, yeah, my experience when looking for help was that I had a lot of trouble finding any, and was like, well, fuck it, I guess I have to make my own help, which is why I did that project of streaming all my game design, so I could be like, well, would-be game designer, go look at me fail at this for 20 hours, and then eventually kind of start figuring it, and then do it, and like, here is a record. And part of my desire to be transparent about my process was to make there be a thing that now exists where someone can be like, cool, go watch me design a game, you might learn something. Even if it is to just say, Andrew's wrong, they're doing this wrong, I can do that better. Like, great, sure, totally helpful. That's more than I had. So a big part of it was to just be like, fuck it, and go make my own, because there is very little material available. I have John's ear. I could like bug him whenever the fuck I wanted, but I didn't, mostly out of respect for his time, and out of a stubborn desire to do things myself, which is dumb and wrong, but I have it. And then I did ask him for help every now and then. John is the kind of guy I think is helpful, and Strasha said as much to me as well. Sorry, John, if you ever watch this and feel offended, but John is really good if you have very specific questions, and like a clear thing that you like. If you know a lot already, John is the kind of guy who can really get you from like 90% to 100%. He is really good at being generally supportive as well, which is great. He is not the guy for me to go to be like, John, I don't know how to do this thing. God, help me. What do I do? Because he doesn't want to step on my vision. And so he doesn't want to make this John's game. He wants it to stay Andrew's game. And I think there's like totally merit to this approach, right? He doesn't want to say, oh, you should do this, or you should do it this way. He doesn't want to make those kinds of calls. Even though there were situations he desperately wanted someone to make those calls. And so I kind of sussed this out without like, it wasn't like I was constantly begging him to tell me what to fused or anything. It was just like, clearly this wasn't where it was going to go, and that was not the kind of help that I should expect, so I didn't. And so unfortunately, yeah, my answer is no. Like, every now and then for very specific things, people come in and help me. The most helpful designer has far and away, like, helpful in the sense of like the most hands-on in their help and the most willing and able to come to the table and do that kind of work, has been Luke, who's Games from the Wildwood in chat, and they're an Australian game designer. They are super rad. They workshopped my game with me. We basically went through every fucking ability on every playbook together, and they helped me kind of suss it out. We also went through all the lists of prompts for all the setting stuff, and they helped me kind of edit and pare those down. And then I have done the same for them with their game, and gone through and done like it's basically like half workshopping, half editing, but done in parallel. So the two of us did kind of like a work trade for that, and that was immensely helpful. Both to have just like someone as a sounding board, and as much an expert as I am, at the very least. I think Luke's probably a more experienced designer than I am, honestly. And so the two of us getting to sit together and workshop stuff was great. It was really helpful. Ash, who is a Sejiak in chat, has also been helpful. She like facilitated a playtest of my game on her channel, and we got to play it. And she's a designer, and she provided some feedback. So I do have a community of designers that I stumbled into entirely on accident, and they have helped me out. But it's probably not the people that folks would expect, where they're like, you know, Adam designed a game. And like, yes, I know Adam, and Adam and I are friends, and that's why I'm not subjecting him to helping me with design, because I know that he's way too fucking busy. Also, weirdly, like, and I think Adam wouldn't like correct me on this, like, Adam's not much of a game designer. Like, he's not really super into designing games. He's not the kind of person who's like super jazzed to be doing the craft. I think he like he's fully capable and can do it, but he either doesn't have the time or the inclination to do it all the time. And so I don't want to drag him into it. And he's got lots of other shit he's doing. Also, he's never going to finish Womb of Night if I ask him any questions ever. he's on the ticket for that. He's got to make that at some point. So yeah, the community support of designers that have been supporting me have not been the ones that I might have expected or other people might expect, but I have found them. I have also heard good things about the Gauntlet, which I know Fraser is involved in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there are like all kinds of secret game designers out there. As a collective, designers of role-playing games are not very well organized, not very accessible, not very no one fucking writes anything down and shares it with people, in my experience. You know, like there's no fucking man. It's really hard.
Yeah.
It's like recipes for Cajun food. Everybody's got their own and nobody wants to tell you what it is.
Yeah, there's this really like working in isolation, auteur kind of vibe, which again, I could point my finger at kind of like the prevailing culture within the space and be like, this is part of why. Because again, there aren't a lot of like community builders and stuff like that. And that's all part of it as well. So, or the types of communities that are built are not very welcome, super opaque. Yeah, it's like, it's difficult. The information is out there. I'm trying to help chip away at that by making my process really visible and available. But yeah, it's tough. I don't know, like people who are local would be way better to like fucking, when I do a 6-hour design workshop with Luke, who lives in Australia, that means that I'm staying up until like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
It's not the most convenient. It would be real nice if I could go to a coffee shop with someone and just sit down. Oh, also, I am like personal friends with Avery Alder, the designer of Monster Hearts. I have never talked to her about my game. Like all my big famous game designer friends have had no input on this game. It's dumb.
That's actually really interesting to me because I feel like, and this is as a complete outsider, but like I get this impression that like there's like this cadre of people that's up there designing games. And
gosh, I wish that would be nice. And they just like descend as a host of angels and lift me up into their ranks and hand me a trumpet and things. Yeah,
like you climb the stairs to Mount Olympus, and then they're all up there like around a table.
They're all like pulling their hair out on their current project, and well, I don't know. Like 4 weeks ago, like everyone's just too fucking busy trying to make shit happen.
Yeah,
so that's really interesting because like you can go to like there's a writers groups or I think that's like super prolific, but not design group.
Yeah, I mean the field of game design is really young, or stunted, hasn't grown. You know, like
I think that's
whether or not it's not necessarily that it's new. It doesn't feel very like deeply instantiated, or at least not in North America. There have been some kind of incidental communities, like the Pacific Northwest is pretty good for there being lots of game designers in a fairly tight space, and a lot of them happen to like play together and stuff. But that is as much happenstance as anything else. And so there isn't a lot of like formal or structured ways to. There aren't a lot of formal or structured ways to kind of get into the craft. And a lot of designers are fucking weirdos, like Vincent Baker, for all of his merits, like that dude literally says, to do it, you do it. Like he makes these incredibly reductive, useless statements, and people like nod their head and are like, "Ah, yes, very wise." Like that's fucking nonsense. Come on. And like Vincent is deliberately obtuse about stuff, and that is not helpful. It's cool and makes him this very neat like cult figure, but it doesn't help me learn game design. He obscures a lot of his design practice.
Yeah.
So people are being like deliberately obstinate about sharing their process. Like, come on.
I feel that frustration. That sounds kind of frustrating. Yeah.
So yeah, there is kind of the expectation that you stumble through it, and then if you can like publish a game, maybe people talk to you or something. I don't know.
Still waiting on your invite to the club.
Yeah, they haven't descended and given me my wings and trumpet. So
that's actually, stunted is a really interesting way to put that, because when I think about, because I have a habit of just like collecting old RPG books, like things I'll never play, but stuff that's like from way back to present, and you can definitely see like it come in waves where there's new stuff, and a lot of the stuff that comes out is not very good, so it goes away really fast and nobody remembers it. But I wonder how much like the new interconnectedness that we have now with the internet and stuff, where I can just like reach out and find a thing, right?
Yeah, you can tweet at your favorite designer and be like, "Why'd you design it this way?" And they might answer. And like we have also seen this thing of like the main way that design information, like technique, gets communicated is in finished product, where like Apocalypse World comes out and then a bunch of people are able to learn from it by deconstructing it and like reverse engineering their own games out of it. And similarly, when John designed Blades, there was this idea of like having there be the structure of the game with its various layers permitting hacking of it, and making that something that was more transparent to people. So it's like clear how you can go about it, and that the guts of the game are exposed in a certain way. Although, as I was ranting about earlier, I think a lot of people miss some of the ways in which the like poetry layer is load bearing to the mechanics and vice versa. So it's an imperfect model for teaching people stuff, because it depends on them to be able to figure out and do some engineering, in reverse of your product. It's no one learns how to make airplanes by just taking apart an airplane. Like, that's not how we go about teaching. Like, we might do that in the course of teaching, but we also have this whole structure around teaching people, and it's not really so with games. And if my fairly short experience in the video game industry is taught me anything, it's that also like on the big level of like making games in that sense, people also still don't know what the fuck they're doing and aren't good at like communicating or sharing the information. And that's it with like, I worked on the world's largest sports video game title, and it was a nightmare of like goofs and fumbles, and just like no one knew what the fuck was going on, and planning everything was a total mess. And so like most human endeavor is fundamentally like flawed and confused and jumbled. And even people who we see as experts probably couldn't tell us why or how they did a lot of things that they did. Or like they could give you a reason, but it would not be the full story. And only looking back in history with people doing a lot of study, with a lot of like collective effort pointed at a given thing, can we then really be like, oh, this works because of these reasons. Because like a bunch of stuff that I'm going to do that's going to be successful in whatever game I make is going to be on accident. It's gonna be incidental. Or I'll just have it happen to make a thing work. And so later people can ascribe why or how. But in the moment, I'm not even the best person to answer.
Just doing the thing.
So yeah, like I can ask that of other people, but maybe they don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe John was just like, I just made a cool looking sheet. I don't know. And then you play a game with it, and it just happens to work. Like, I don't know. I think John is a very smart game designer. Not to like talk him down, but his approach, his way of working is like totally different from my way of working. He makes sheets because he's a designer, like a layout guy, and so that's how his brain can push through into games, is by way of interface. He makes interface first and then builds the stuff behind the interface as he goes. Whereas my way of thinking about it has been really structural and from the inside out, and I really struggle to like communicate the functioning that I envision. The UI layer of it is something that I start how to like best signal these things to people. So we all bring different kind of strengths and mindsets to it.
Yeah, Yeah. I mean, I like your point about that sort of the communal effort to document the thing and to codify the thing.
God, like, I was thinking last night or something about just how fucking complicated media is to consume these days.
Yeah.
Like, how much foundational shit I need to know in order to appreciate a GIF, like something that I consume in like less than a second, and I'm like, there's like all this crazy shit going on of like all these nested meanings. Like memes are an incredibly dense cultural artifact, and we just fucking snap them up no problem. But like that has been built and built and built and built with all of these different types of media and like broader kind of structures of media, and then there are all still all this nuance to it where like if I see a certain meme come up by way of Black Twitter, that means one thing, whereas if like it comes up in kind of more like mainstream Twitter, it means something else, or it's going to have different nuance, or it's going to be targeting at different people, or be punching up or punching down variously depending on who's using it. And we parse all of this meaning, and we can navigate this stuff. I mean, it's not always clean, but like, we get through that stuff. And that stuff is like, that is cultural trash. It's not even the like really complicated, advanced, or like crafted stuff. And so like people are still studying fucking Anne of Green Gables and shit, like it's just like a little book about whatever. So to think that any one person could fully understand something as complicated as like a role-playing game in its time even is a lot to expect. To be able to understand it on that level of like, I know exactly what everything means, why everything is what it is, how it works. It's like that kind of big academic sophistication is something that we don't have about these things. And so it's very hard to then make the things. It's a very confusing set of parameters to try to
it feels like sorry, let me talk about it. It feels like instead of like because the academic setting, I think is the analog that my brain automatically went to, because the idea of collecting knowledge and sort of collating it and figuring out the steps and all these things. Because right now, what it feels like in a lot of ways, and always has in a lot of ways, and almost literally, is we have like these, like the equivalent of like the old wise person sitting on a mountaintop waiting for inspiration to strike, or like to hand down the documents. And I mean, they're approachable wise people sitting on mountaintops in a lot of cases, but their knowledge is still self-contained. It's all in here, right?
Yeah, there's like an opaque thing that barfs out game, and we have to wait, and we don't know how it does it. And you can see like there are like I'm gonna start using like educational terminology, but there's like progressive game designers that are sort of building in that this is how you design a thing, and this is how you run a thing into their stuff, which is sort of a new deal as well, because it didn't used to be that way at all. Absolutely.
It's very interesting to me. Like, I wonder if at some point we will move closer towards that sort of collective knowledge base, or are the other pressures around the hobby too great to allow that to happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really wonderful that folks have been like, the thing that I found most interesting about Apocalypse World coming out was people getting up in arms about being told how to run the game. Which was such a hilarious like signaling moment in the culture of role-playing games, to have this idea that like there is the one player who is exceptional and has no rules and does whatever the fuck they want to, and then there's everyone else who is like crammed in these tiny mechanical boxes. And you just be like, no, you also have a box, motherfucker. Here it is. Let me drive. But, like, this is your box.
Welcome to the box.
That was a way of demystifying GMing. It's like an incredibly important step, and
absolutely
that we are beginning also to demystify game designing is super cool. And that I think, given how our culture and like craft is currently, like the current model for exchanging knowledge is, as we were talking about earlier, like through finished works.
Yeah.
It is necessary to build into that finished work the educational tools, because they will not exist anywhere else unless you write them. They aren't.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's like fundamental that designers do that, and that they put in some work on the back end supporting other folks. So like John is doing a really good job of this, and like I must give credit where it is due in terms of like he designed his game to be like it is eminently hackable, and exposes its guts to everyone playing it as well as those designing it. And then he is doing the work of like providing ongoing framework and support to people who are hacking the games. Shout them out on the like Blade's website, which is like a pretty small thing, but to connect his audience to this kind of larger network of games that are from his game is like, it's good for him. Certainly it's going to make him more money and make his product more successful. And it's also going to, as delightful upsides, make more people designers, make more people game runners, make more people involved in the, like, it's just going to do a bunch of really good work for everyone. And so he had the foresight or sense or whatever to take that on. Is it great, amazing. We are lucky to have that. And like people like Sean Nittner being super proactive about seeking, like I was at Colorado a couple weeks ago and Sean was out there just being like, yo, I work at a publishing company, so if you have a game, play your game with me. We can see, like, I will talk to you about what it's going to need to get published, etc. And he did that with a bunch of different games and helped people kind of point themselves in that direction if that was something they were excited about doing. And so having folks like that who are out there doing that work is how it's got to be right now, because there is no institution, there is no ivory tower of game design. As much as it feels like there's a mountain to climb up to talk to the wise man, right? Like there really isn't. There's nothing. It's people doing shit out of pocket, doing shit independently. It's really fucking small as a, you know, as a craft, as like a community of artisans, if you want to go down that road. Like I think it's really important. I wish there were more of it. It's something I've been trying to chip away at.
I think there's a couple interesting points there, because I guess in retrospect, the people who I would picture as being the wise person on the mountain probably don't think of themselves in that sense, right?
Oh god,
like,
they're probably horrified at the idea.
Yeah, with maybe a couple of exceptions, like Monty Cook. Monty Cook thinks he's sitting on a mountain somewhere, but everybody else is like. But then there's also the idea that, like, and I mean no disrespect to literally anyone about this, it might sound like it at a very shallow level, but like, I now think that I could probably design a game if I wanted to, because so many people are doing it and doing it so well.
Yeah,
like not
the
to say that
demystification of it, right? To be like,
exactly.
Yes, you too can do this thing. That's what we need to do, because
having all these great conversations is. I was driving home, man. I wonder if I could make a game about something interesting.
So like building the sense of it, the accessibility of it is really great, and having there be like a rolling conversation that be a witness to and participate in has probably been the most important development in games in the past, you know, X amount of time. And I think like so this is like before my time, but I Forge and some of these other like early kind of design forms, they all tanked for good reason, because again, we're coming back to this effective community building. So like as the community matures, like, or as like people who do games mature and realize the need for these communities, and they try to make them, and like, you know, like getting something good established in that sense is also going to be a great help for every other aspect, right? Like they're so fundamental to anything else happening.
Yes. I think that one of the issues, and one of the interesting things about that goes back to a conversation we were having way back at the beginning about how organization is not a male-coded activity. Self-promotion and ambition are male-coded activities,
and so those have been definitive for how people. Yeah, this is my like bugbear on this whole subject. So I feel very strongly that all is true. Other people might find they have different experiences of it, and that's great. But for me personally, from where I've been standing, that's very much how it's felt. So.
Yeah. Sort of circling back around on that, to put you on the spot a little bit, what is your vision for how Girl by Moonlight sort of gets into the world proper?
So my timeline is tentatively I want it to be publishable by winter this year.
Okay.
That is my timeline. Don't hold me to it because I know I fucking won't. And so I would love to be at a point where I can, this is like ready to go, and then I can look at publishing. I don't know what the shape of that is going to be. There are some options around like Kickstarter and that kind of stuff. Since I am a person who has never designed a game before and has never like published a game before, I didn't want to just be like, cool, I'm gonna do a Kickstarter. Like Fraser can do that because he has done it before and knows what he's getting himself into and can do the timelines and can have a sense of what the production is going to look like. For me, I had no idea whether, and so I didn't want to sign myself up for a bunch of work that I wasn't sure I could commit to or complete. And so I am saving anything like that for the latter end of it if I do end up on that route. So that's definitely one, is to like do a Kickstarter and just kind of do the basic independent publishing kind of mode. I definitely want to have there be a book by whatever way I get there. I want there to be, I want to have a budget for art so that I can get a bunch of people that I want to support, and like, I just want to use it as a way to like gather a bunch of money and then give that money to and I would be really excited about that. One thing that I think would be cool for Kickstarter is the option of having stretch goals and like bringing in some other designers to do little add-ons and bits and pieces. Although I would probably curate that really ruthlessly because I'm just that kind of person, where I have like a certain vision for it and I wouldn't want to just give people carte blanche. So I'd be kind of a shit in that way. I'd be like, make this exact thing that I'm not going to design it, but I'm going to mostly design it and execute on it and do all the boring stuff. Here you go. So like there is the possibility of that. I think like if in a perfect world, I would farm out this making pre-gen content stuff to other people. So I think other people would be a lot better at it than I. And stuff like that would make sense as like stretch goals. So I've been doing some considering on how I want to go through with that. But first and foremost, I want to make the game and have the game done. And then once I have reached that point, I'm at, like through the desert and I emerge out the other side with my thing, then I'll start actually thinking about what the fuck to do. Like fair. I just need to get there first because I don't even know if I can. Yeah. So that's a very good question to which I cannot level an effective answer. And it's yet another realm that I have to enter into that I have never, it's another thing I haven't done before.
Yeah.
And couldn't even begin to tell you what the full process would be like. And there are bits of it that I won't know to think of and stuff. So I'll have to talk to some friends who are experts and be like, what do I do now?
I feel like if nothing else, the like indie RPG community can probably help you walk through Kickstarter.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Johnstone Metzger lives in town, and that dude be like, so last night I was just asleep, and so I made a book. I made like a 600-page supplement. Like his fucking like stretch goal thing for Second Skins or for Monster Hearts is its own game. It's Space Worm vs. Moonicorn, and it's fucking amazing. And it's this like huge book. It's full color. Like that dude knows how to make a book. Let me tell you. So I could probably be like, Johnstone, I have this pool of money. Here is a portion of it. You just do this, and he would be like, you haven't spoken to me in several years. I'll be like, I know, bad at managing my time. Please help me out. It would be something like that. God, I'm the worst because like there are lots of people in town here, and I'm just not. A great regret I have. My time management is so poor that I don't get to see all of these cool people and like engage with them. And probably there's a bunch of folks that would be willing to support me if I actually talk to them. All this kind of stuff, but like fucking being a human being is difficult. Is what I have found. And the one thing I can like muster up. The one thing that doesn't generate a shitload of like anxiety for me is the work.
Yeah.
And just doing the work feels really clear and concrete, even with game design being a task that I haven't taken on before. It can be broken down into its constituent units, and those units can be completed, and they can be written on checklists, and the list can have little boxes that I check. I can grind ever forward towards completion. And you know, like that is a thing that my brain wants to do. It wants to have clear tasks and do them. This is why I fucking tunnel into like this is why I play too much Path of Exile, for example. I'll make this character. I just do it. And turn into like a horrible game crunching monster. Whereas the like asking people for things part is like that is like the scariest thing.
Well, just write their name on a piece of paper and put a checkbox next to it.
I do that.
I have right into it.
Game design prom y/n.
Yeah, talk to these people about this thing with a little checkbox. Oh, I did that one. I didn't do this other one.
Oh,
yeah. No, that's how anything ever gets done in this world. It's chaotic jumble.
I was going to say, you for some reason you strike me as a very task-oriented individual. So, yeah, that makes complete sense to me.
Tasks are not as scary as people, so I'll stick to them.
200% true.
Like, I don't have irrational anxiety.
I have
irrational anxiety about talking to people. You know, like
we have very many similar species of brain spiders, it seems.
Our webs are compatible.
Yeah.
So, kind of on a more RPGs as a whole sort of thing. We've been making an effort to talk to, like indie game devs and that sort of thing, and also giving them a spot to sort of nerd out about other games they may be playing that they're super big on and want to get the word out about. So, do you have any of those right now?
Well, I think I can't let Adam be the only person who says no, trash, just play my game. So I'm going to say that first. But if you like eating garbage, then
here's the
I'm still really excited about Blades in the Dark. I nearly got my spot that.
It's fun game.
And I played in the first season of it over on Elf's channel, and then I ran the second. So yeah, Blades is still super good and in my mind, and I know cool Blades shit coming out very soon that John is making. So, that'll be good. And I'll probably never get to play it.
You are a tease of the worst sort.
I don't know. Keep your eyes on it. There will be stuff. Gosh, what else am I stoked about? I'm like, I've already mentioned a bunch of people who are designers, and you should check out all of their stuff, like Fraser and Ash and Luke. I think Luke and Ash are probably less well known, and therefore deserve a little extra shouting. Luke is Games from the Wildwood, and they have like a game where you are trees that is kind of in the vein of The Quiet Year, but like you're not magical trees. Like, you're just trees. Everyone is a tree. And it's legit. It's fun. They have Across the Sea, which is a very cool. I feel like it's also kind of it's like 1 foot in Fall of Magic, 1 foot in The Quiet Year, is how I would pitch it.
Oh, that's a pedigree.
Wow. And so it's very good, and is relatively like you can play it pretty quick, and it's compressed and it has a timeline, like it has a specific duration, which is nice. And generally they have a lot of games around feelings and stuff. And then there's that I always confuse the names of Ash's game, but she just dropped it in chat. I'm gonna scroll back and see it. Blah blah blah. Words. What is the name of it? It's like The Space Between Us or something. But yeah, Luke and Ash co-authored it, and I think maybe Melody also worked on it. And it's really good. It's kind of in the vein, like, Luke will hate me for saying this. It's called Between Dreams, and it's kind of like a magical realism type of vaguely Miyazaki, vaguely what's that author? Anyways, it's cool. You should play it. I don't know. Just look her up. Look up Ash McCallum and look up Luke Jordan and their games, because their games are all real good.
Cool.
Yeah, I feel like I need to promote them. Murakami, because those two have been incredibly kind and supportive to me, and I would be an absolute piece of shit if I didn't talk about them and pay it back. But other than that, I kind of exist in this like very narrow space of games, because like all of my game time is fucking spoken for. It's all scheduled, it's all streamed, and I don't generally get to make choices about what games I play. For both of the Roll20 shows, it is prescribed because one of them has to be D&D, because that's going to get people in, and that's going to like serve the purposes of the show, which is mostly to show off and promote and demo Roll20 for people. And so basically like we're always going to do a D&D stream every week, and then I have one other spot with that program. Right now we're doing Burning Wheel. I am not 100% sure what we're doing after that, but at some point we'll play something else. But again, like there are things motivating that, and I'm getting like, that's my one thing where I get fucking paid. So professionalism kicks in, and I'm just like, yes, I will do whatever is asked. I will bring a good performance to whatever you put in front of me, even if I hate the game.
So
Mage, get the fuck out of here, Mage. It's the worst. I played it, and I made a compelling character, I think, delivered some good performances, and that's what I'm there to do. I'm not there to do things that I like for fun. I'm there to put on a show and do a good job. So that is what I do. And then I have a playtest of my own game on Actual Play right now, and like I'm going to be doing that circuit for a long time. I'm going to be playing my own game a lot. So like a lot of my game time is spoken for. I might have made the completely schedule suicidal decision of trying to work yet another game in to my schedule, but like an in-person game with some friends here in town. And one of them at least is like down with Blades, so I might end up running Blades, which would be cool. Assuming that ever gets off the ground, it can be scheduled. We have to fight the ultimate boss first, though, of my schedule, which is a truly powerful beast.
Adult scheduling is truly one of the great monsters of our time.
Because just to put it in perspective for folks, normally Thursdays is 9 hours of roleplay, because it's 5 hours of Burning Wheel, and then every other Thursday it's 4 hours of Girl by Moonlight and the roleplay, which I am the GM for. And then Fridays it's D&D, and then Saturdays I am on a podcast for 2 or 3 hours, and then have a 4-hour block on Ash's channel. Starting on April 1st, on Sundays, bi-weekly, I will have a 4-hour spot on my own channel where I'm running Girl. And then I work 2 days a week at the bike shop, so I have Mondays off only from April forward. And it's a lot of hours every week. So it's hard to fit stuff in.
Yeah.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Now I feel even more thankful that you chose to spend some of your extremely limited free time with us. Like,
I mean, I gotta do the
shit.
media stuff, promote my game. I'm also delighted to be here talking. It's great, but like, this is part of the work, is to fucking hustle and put in a bunch of time and try to make a decent run of being a game designer-y person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse
me.
So,
sorry.
No, it's okay. I actually wanted to piggyback on one of the things that you said about being a good player on stream. Is do you find that being a good player on stream being different than being a good player at a table?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, yeah, like I'm not there to serve my own purposes. I'm not just there to have fun. For one, and like, I do have fun sometimes, but I am, keenly aware of the fact that it's always often someone else's show or has some particular objective, and so I want to make sure that my play satisfies those objectives, whatever they may be, and also that I need to be like extra mindful of other people, because streaming, you only have one audio channel, which is a really important thing.
Yeah.
No one can talk at the same time. Like, it just immediately is lost. Like, as soon as two of y'all are talking, or if I'm talking, I cannot, the words don't come through clearly.
Yeah.
And so for the audience, that's a really big, important thing, is that there just be one voice at a time and one kind of thread that they can follow. Generally, folks are listening, not watching. And so we have to be mindful of that and kind of provide description that's going to be, doesn't have a lot of like hand gestures. I don't want to be like, it's this big.
Right.
Describe, I want to keep the audio clean and good and easy to follow. I want to try to, like, I don't do accents and stuff, but I try to characterize my dialogue and make it clear when I am speaking in character or when I'm not, because I do a lot of stepping back and forth between the two. Because I mostly play at a remove. Folks who watch probably notice that I tend to third person my character around. I don't do I do this or whatever. I always talk about my character doing stuff.
Yeah.
And part of that is a decision on my part to be really clear about. And so, yeah, like, playing on stream is a different beast. There's a whole set of considerations. It's the kind of thing, and it's a job. It's something that I view as work, and that changes your perspective on stuff as well.
Yeah,
for sure. It's been weird doing a podcast because they can edit it.
Oh, yeah.
Which is wild. So I have room to like flub, which is nice. Because when you're doing shit live, that's a thing too. Because like, you get kind of your very limited window and to do stuff. You want to make sure that it is both like good as a performance in the moment, and then also is building towards something good, like on the broader arc of the story and all this kind of stuff. With the podcast, like, I can just be like, this thing, and then like, no, fuck that thing, this other thing. Or just like, I can goof my words and then stop, take a breath, and then say it again and have it come out clean. So that's been interesting as a shift. It still mostly is just kind of done live, but like, we don't do a ton of editing or like redoing scenes or whatever, but it's just a very different context. I think the live element is definitely a big challenge, and has kind of like ingrained in me some very thinking role playing, including the bit where I compulsively look to my right side monitor check chat even when
Uh-huh.
and there's no chat. I'm still doing it. Weird habits like that. To the point, it's trained in me to the point that I wait for chat I wait for the delay and then I look anytime something interesting happens.
Man.
1, 2, 3, 4, boom, and like my muscle memory is just doing it. It was wild to catch myself doing that. Yeah, we've been doing it since, I always forget when we started, but like 2013, 2014. With the Roll20 crew, that was like the first show. And it's been a big learning process in terms of like finding a stride and finding ways to make it work. And it's been a lot of being better at the table and being a better listener and being a more active listener, and trying to think about engaging more characters in a given story and like really trying to do a better job of being a role player, is what it has pushed me to do first and foremost. Because nothing motivates me like someone else. Doing something for someone else is the best way to get me. Because I don't really give a shit about doing stuff for my own sake, which is a horrible behavior. I got lots of bad behaviors. That's definitely one of them. So yeah, I think it's had a really positive effect on my skills as a role player, and made me be more critical about myself in a productive way.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, at the rate you are screaming towards 10,000 hours of like online role playing for mastery there.
Oh gosh, yeah. If we're using that model,
yeah,
hundreds and hundreds of hours. And it's not just the time that you're thinking about things and playing out scenes in my head, or to like have a plan of I'm going to say these exact things, but just to practice being in characters. Trying to think about, like, I try to imagine hypotheticals for my characters and what kinds of stuff they might do. So when situations come up, I can either loop in and adapt one of those hypotheticals, or at least have a kind of framework and understanding of what they're like, and just keep them consistent and solid. Because like watching, and people care and are paying attention, so don't be inconsistent. Don't have bad habits. Don't always inflect your voice a certain way, because that annoys people. All these little fucking things. That said, some people are never happy, and I do go through on these shows, just to kind of get a barometer, because again, I want to make sure that I'm not, like, if I'm constantly the sore thumb and people are always talking about, at least to just get them stuck on something else. And there's one guy who just fucking hates one of my characters and goes way out of his way to comment, and I'm just like, yo, you're still watching.
Yeah,
I have done my job. But yeah, it's wild out there. People get really invested. Having an audience is fucking weird. Strange phenomena. And we don't even have a huge audience. We're like the third biggest RPG show, if even that, because there's always Critical Role and MEJP's Roleplay to factor in. Like, I'm not on one of those. Those are the big audiences. And so, yeah, I can't even imagine what that's like. Just the sheer like scale of it is pretty baffling to me. So,
I think y'all are still several miles ahead of where we are, even if you're number 3. So,
and I could definitely be wrong. I don't know what the full.
I
don't have time to keep tabs on everything because I'm too busy making stuff.
Yeah.
So
no time for stats.
Or just like to keep up with other roleplay content. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
That actually, do you ever like go back and watch game tape?
So back when I wasn't making as much, like for the first Apocalypse World show, every week my homework was to rewatch the last week's episode. Because I wanted to, especially for that breakout one, I wanted to keep everything super fucking tight and like really. Yeah. And this is still something I value, of just being like, really, are we talking about this? Like, are we wasting time on this thing? Like, let's try to just prune it down to what is the most exciting stuff. And I found that watching the episode through was like, so much better than any kind of note taking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it's just exactly literally what happens. You get to see it again. And having that fresh in my mind going into the next week's session, thinking about it, like off camera, basically, was all super helpful. And I think I stopped having time to do that after the first season of Burning Wheel. There was just starting to be too much, because once we got on 2 shows a week for Roll20, it was just like, I can't watch all like 16 hours or 20 hours that I have produced of content, right? Like, I just can't do that.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And as there were more and more things, honestly, it becomes more and more actually do that, because I've got these 5 different threads that I'm playing in. So I've tried to do better about taking notes. I've tried to, in games I'm running, I try to really push the recap work onto the players and just be like, hey, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
What was interesting? Like, what stuck out for y'all? And then what can we start focusing on today? And to do a little bit of off-camera work, talking about folks and checking in and being like, cool, where do we want this story to go? I think there's probably it would be something that people wouldn't think to do, because it will like spoil the magic or whatever. But like, honestly, talk to everyone about where you want the story to go, what kind of stuff you want to cover on a given day, have a plan and try to stick to it, because you're putting on a show and you got to keep it clean and on point and on topic and moving and interesting. And so anything you can do to streamline that process and get rid of the ums and the gaffes and the like pointless, eddies of the story, do it.
Definitely.
Less and less and less. Cut and cut and cut. It's what everyone should always be trying to do, is eliminate shit.
Has the online sort of play for Girl by Moonlight specifically, has that been useful for your design?
Yeah, I mean, it's opened up a bunch of playtesting options, because like I don't have a group locally to play with, so it helps that I can do a playtest with Ash, who's in Australia, or with Sean, Andy, and Strush, who are in various parts of the US. And I made a really like rudimentary roll mac basic character sheet, and then Ash helped me refine it, so there is a better sheet that's coming out with the next release, to help folks playtest. And I think also that it helps other people play the game, which is probably the most important thing. Just getting as many people able to play it, and if they find out about the game online and can't play the game online, that's just one more barrier to them, right? Like, ideally, when they go to click on my game, it would just be like, and these people are playing it, or these people want to play it. Chat with each other, figure it out. Because you just want there to be as little stopping people as possible. So like applications like Roll20 and stuff like that are a blessing in that way. And they're not paying me to say that. They're paying me to do other stuff.
We've been using Roll20 for a long time. It's definitely a handy tool, especially when we're spread across all of North America at this point.
Yeah.
And it's a sufficiently niche hobby that you gotta lean on the internet to make it happen if you want it to happen reliably as an adult, I feel. Like, getting grown-up people to commit to like weekly things is a Sisyphean task. Anyways, it's pushing the boulder up the hill forever.
Especially when you work technical gremlins and just all that stuff in there. It's
there are already so many things working against you.
The fact that it happens anywhere for everybody is sort of just like a miracle when you think about it.
Yes.
Go for it.
I think that you have a very good point, though, way back with the streams for your design, where if I'm streaming, I have to do the thing, right? To make sure a game happens online, if you're like, oh, we stream on Tuesday nights, Like that's an extra level of like, oh, we have to be there to stream on Tuesday nights for those like 2.5 people that watch us on average.
But yeah, anything that gets you, gets you in the chair and doing the thing is good, even if you're tricking yourself. And yeah, like we fucking stick to our schedule with all the Roll20 stuff. I say that one was canceled today. Very, very rare that they get canceled. I make bringing my laptop and traveling so that I can still be in for the stream on Thursday and Friday and then do something out of town, that kind of thing. So it keeps you on board and engaged in a way that just doing it for fun doesn't.
Yeah. Here's a really weird question. Do you ever go creep on Girl by Moonlight streams? Just like go and like secretly watch people play your game?
I usually announce my presence if I'm rolling in. There hasn't been, because I'll either be in the stream already or I don't know that it's happening, I guess, because maybe some other folks are. But there were a couple running for a minute. I did watch them and like take notes, and this was all like very early. It was mostly very surface level stuff that I was able to get at. I haven't had someone do like a full run of it that I can except myself. I'm the only person that I know of who has done that, along with the people I played with, obviously. But and like and honestly, the game in the very early stages wasn't could comfortably be run for a whole like arc. So it's not like I'm blaming anyone for that. But it's I feel like it's stable now and it's very playable. So I would hope that someday soon I'll get someone being like, yeah, we played 10 sessions. Here's all of our stuff. If you're out there and you have, please send me your feedback. Please, even just to say we did it, that would be nice.
Know it happened.
Have the annotated
Yeah,
John Madden of the video. I just want to doodle on stuff.
Sorry, that was coming.
No,
all right.
It would be great if I could see it.
All right, I got another off the wall question for you that is totally unrelated to anything else we've asked so far.
Great.
There are a number of unpainted minis here, right? And one of the folks wanted me to ask about them.
Oh yeah. So I play War Machine, and currently I am working on a Magnus the Warlord list. So I've got my custom. They're all like kit bashes of Signar Warjacks, because basically the general is like he's a traitor. He serves the like deposed king in exile. So I have all of his like defector Signar stuff that I've kit bashed together, because he's actually in a different faction. So I'm working on painting those up. I stream a lot of my painting, so that's something I do on my channel when I have time and the wherewithal. I think when the weather's been pretty good, and the main barrier has been that some stuff like these guys are still just the raw pewter. They're not base coated yet, and it's because I can't go outside and use my spray paints for them, because of the humidity, temperature, etc. factors for it. So I got to wait for the weather to be a little. And then I'm going to get back into that. But I really love, converting, sculpting, modifying, all that stuff. And then the painting. I like playing the game, but there isn't time for that. I cannot do it on the internet, so it doesn't happen. And I miss playing the game. I also miss a hobby that I don't have time for, like playing sports. I used to be able to play bike polo, which is a super cool thing that I do. I say I do, but it's more like I used to do, because I don't get any chances to play anymore. And it makes me really sad. Because all other hobbies have been gobbled by fucking game design. Just ate my life. That and streaming. So it's rough. But yes, I love building and painting minis. It's a good time.
Awesome. Cool.
I lack the dexterity for that.
it's all practice. I used to be hot trash at painting, and now I'm like pretty good. It's all like this is another thing I can talk about. It's all about getting access to that knowledge of like how to do the thing, to make it, you know, a little more approachable and know where to direct your energy, and then you can do it. Which is another reason why I like streaming painting, because people are like, "Oh, how do you do that?" And I can be like, "Well, let me fucking show you live." I think that kind of stuff is super cool, and I love when I can learn something just kind of off the cuff that way, and someone can just do something that they are excited about and show me how. Is great. Like I love picking up new skills and trying new things. Hence me doing most of these things that I do now.
Yeah, and that skill trading that we humans do is really amazing sometimes. It's like, show me this thing.
It's so easy for someone who knows how to show you how to do it. It's so easy. And like teaching people is a skill set, and like some people are better at it than others, but even them just doing it in front of you is so informative and exposes so much. That's been like the great blessing of all this stuff. Like I feel like people can like watch me and the Roll20 crew playing games and like learn how to play those games or learn how to be good. Because not to like toot my own horn or anything, but like we're pretty good role players. We make good stories. We treat each other with respect. We engage with difficult topics in productive ways. Like we can demo a lot of really good habits for people, and it can expand their understanding of like what behaviors fit into the category of role playing as well. Because for a lot of folks, being a good conversationalist or being a good person don't factor into playing role playing games. And those skills matter. And so being able to demonstrate that for people and model that behavior, I think is really, really important. And if we don't do it, someone else is going to do it, and they're going to do it wrong. Right?
Yeah.
Like the PewDiePies of the world will be showing people how to behave, and that's just like, it's just not acceptable.
Well, that's the thing that's always sort of, well, not always, but since I've sort of become slightly more enlightened as a human, I guess, has struck me as odd is how social our foundation of our hobby is, and how little a lot of us worry about how we act in that space and how we approach the social aspects of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of unexamined behavior in there.
Yeah.
And like weird leftover stuff, like how the GM or the dungeon master in a D&D is responsible for everything. Where did that come from? It's not in the game.
Nope. That is,
but it's like this emergent property of how the game is.
Yeah.
Because there is this like long thread of culture where that kind of was always the case, where like, you know, like Gary or whoever else would be like running the game. Or was this like weird nerd power trip for those people, and that shitty behavior of theirs got encoded into the game in subtle ways and into the culture in really explicit ways.
Yeah, I think that it's also interesting. So there's a really weird story they had that one of my good friend's father wound up playing D&D with Arneson at one point at Arneson's table, and he said that the whole thing, they had not just the GM screen, right, but he had like this like hood and things where you couldn't see him at all, and the idea was he was pulled out of the experience.
Yeah.
And he was sort of behind the man behind
a disembodied narrator kind of.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, but so that wasn't necessarily like I'm dominating this table by my presence thing, but I'm sure to some of the people playing with him, it definitely read that way. And if you hear about that like apocryphally, like, yeah, that sounds like a thing a creepy power nerd would do.
Well,
like,
and it's like, oh, I can't be seen. I'm too special. I'm magical, mysterious. Like, even if it's like the inversion of taking up space by like eliminating yourself from it, you're still making yourself more special. It's like how Hemingway used to write his name in lowercase, and it's like, cool, yeah, you're real humble, except that makes you stick out on the line because everyone else's name is uppercase. You fucking asshole. Like, it's that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, any exceptionalist behavior can create a weird paradigm.
Yep. Especially when one way or another, the hobby, everyone in the hobby sort of reifies that sort of person, that specific, those specific people for so long that those behaviors not only become normalized, but almost idealized to the point where that's where you're supposed to be. Yeah. It's really weird. Ever since, like, because I did my grad work in, like, educational psychology, and so once I started looking at the world that way, my hobby got a lot weirder. When I looked at it,
we're acting ill funny.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's people bringing their discipline to the hobby can only be good, in my opinion, because it will lead to better and different analyses of how fucked up and weird it is. And, like, maybe it's like, oh, this is fucked up and weird and this really wonderful.
Yeah.
Look at this cool. But also, yeah, we can prune and eliminate some problems.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like a lot of what we do, I find really, like, cool and inspiring. The way that we were talking earlier about, like, the collectivism and the sort of working together to make a thing happen, and in a lot of cases that happens spontaneously, absent any sort of framework given you by the game, because that's the thing that you try to do. But at the same time, a lot of times it doesn't, and things get really, really bad. So
yeah, like D&D does not include a manual how to make 4 friends to play D&D with. It provides no structure for enabling that. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, that's the biggest hurdle.
Yeah,
just like getting a group. It's the least tangible part of the whole equation.
Yeah.
And so, gosh, yeah, I wish it had some help in there.
Yeah. Well, it's not even just getting a group, but, like, getting a group and having that group be compatible and knowing when to bail if it isn't, or when to, like, put your shoulder into it and try to make it work, or, like.
Yep. I mean, that's just the business of being a human. The incredibly difficult, complicated, tragic business of being a human.
It really is.
It's overrated.
It really is. Says the woman in cat ears.
Hey, look, I'm trying to opt out wherever I can, okay? Like, just get on my level.
That's fair.
So our technical gubbins seem to be expanding slightly, and I think the stream may be cutting out. But we've been going for like 2.5 hours, so maybe this is a good spot to wrap up, if that works for you.
Was there anything else you wanted to touch base on?
Is that me that we're asking?
I mean, I'll do this all night, but you're the one that gets to tell us.
I mean, yeah, we can just keep talking and not have to worry stream is happening. So we can have a secret interview after this one that none of the people watching will get to know about. And now, even if we don't do it, they'll think we did it.
Yeah, exactly.
We did that with John, and then it stretched like another 3 hours. So, beware. I think we just got a challenge accepted.
I had an hour sit down with John, totally on accident. 6 of the hours of it were streamed, but then there were another 2 afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm down. I'm down to keep talking, but if technical close the stream so that the content remains good.
Yeah. I don't want to have the end of it kind of fall to shit technically, not from a conversation wise, because I feel like this has been really rad, but I don't want it to become a slog to get through because it doesn't work.
We'll keep the people wanting more, and you'll just have to.
Dude, we will have you.
Love to do this again.
Yeah, I have a separate side chat that I'm trying to manage, where I'm trying to bring people back for the comeback tour for stuff. So you're on that list, and I may ping you for a thing in the future that I can't go into yet, but
yeah, let's be the beginning of a long-standing community relationship.
Hey, I dig it a lot. So first off, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and like just kind of honest about everything. It's nice to have just like a frank discussion about, I mean, anything in general.
Yes.
But yes,
you can count on me to be blunt and direct as much as I can be. Those are things I value.
Yeah, that's definitely what we're here for. So before we do our whole outro thing, why don't you go through your plug all the things? You have the unlimited power strip, so use all the plugs.
Unlimited power. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to plug tonight is feminism. Go get you some. Get you some feminism.
Look it up, nerds.
Go kiss some types of people that you wouldn't normally. Try weird relationship stuff that you maybe don't think is right for you. Give it a shot. Talk about it. Talk about your feelings. There is no such thing as straight people. The government is lying to you about pretty much everything, and everyone exploit you. So burn it down, tear it down, but be nice to each other. First and foremost, all of that stuff. You said I could plug anything.
No, I'm not saying this is bad. It's just no one's ever used that opening to plug feminism, which, I mean, it's
shout
good.
Out to feminism. I see you out there. You're doing good stuff. Keep changing and growing. I like it. Shout out to queer theory, queer every binary, as so famously and adroitly said. Play some weird games. Play games by queer or otherwise marginalized designers. I will platform for queer people because that's where I'm from. But there are great designers of color and other folks out there. Try all their shit. When you've done that and you feel like you are ready, play Girl by Moonlight, a game about tragic magical girls by yours truly, Andrew Gillis. And you can have lots of feelings in it. The game reliably makes feelings in people. It's pretty cool. So get ready for some feelings. I recommend feeling things. It is a good time. Or sad time. It's a bunch of times.
But even then, it's a good time.
You can watch me on a bunch of different Twitch channels, twitch.tv/Acegiak, ACEGIAK, or twitch.tv/Roll20 app, twitch.tv/DND, because I'm super official that way. I'm streaming in all these places. I'm going to be starting a Girl by Moonlight playtest on my channel, twitch.tv/ActualFactual, on April 1st. So it's going to be like in the afternoon Pacific time. That's going to be with me, with Luke, who is a game designer, Daniel, who is one of the editors for Monster Hearts and is a super secret badass that no one knows about, and he's going to be on a stream for like the first time ever.
Cool.
With Alex Roberts, who is a game designer and a cool lady all around, and she has games about feelings. And Kira, who is also a cool game designer. And I also stream other random stuff like video games sometimes and painting minis sometimes. And I rant about shit occasionally on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @CommutingCrow, and that's the best way to find any and all of these things I've talked about, if any of them appeal to you. I'm also making stretch goals for Fraser Simon's Hack the Planet. They are for a manufactured person in the vein of stand-up girl, programmed to, like, genetically encoded to want to, like, file things instead of be afraid of things or have sex. And there's a bunch of fucked up stuff in there. I highly recommend that you play it when it comes out. It's going to be a trip. And then I'm also making a playbook that's kind of going to be like the Hull or the Vampire in Blades, but for when you're too fucking cybered up and have, like, removed your brain and spinal column from your original body and starting into other stuff and getting weird. And it's going to be all about, like, obsession and being a sort of post-human thing and what that's like. I'm really excited about all these things, and you should be too.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's my story. Cool.
Oh, jeez. Sorry.
That's how we know we're done. Punctuated with it.
So that is going to wrap up our Improbable interview for tonight. I have a few upcoming ones to layout for you. I had to get my phone out so I could look at my calendar. On next Thursday, the 29th of March, we are interviewing Kira. On the 30th of March, we're interviewing Tracy Barnett. I'm bad at last names. Let me scroll down. And on the 12th of April, we are interviewing Luke, aka Games from the Wildwood, in chat.
Yeah.
There are some other ones in the works that I'm still nailing down. There's a lot of schedule gubbins to figure out, as we have previously discussed, but
that's the thing.
We hope to keep doing these as long as people are still willing to spend time talking to us for some reason. So we're just not going to question it.
You got to do it for the culture and for the community. I don't know. This stuff is really nice and really important.
Yeah, I figure the least we can do is try to give people a platform to speak from, regardless of how small our platform might be. So, shut up. Well, he was already here. He's already here, so it's fine. We can pull the curtain back on that one. No, but yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. We hope you continue to do so. Follow us at ThatD&D Podcast on Twitter. We're also thatdndpodcast.com, youtube.com/thatdndpodcast, twitch.com/thatdndpodcast. We're not really original with names. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it's one of our features. So yes, that'll be all for us tonight. Thank you again, Andrew, for coming on, and have a good night out there, everybody. And